Good evening. Good evening. We're going to start the meeting. And as long as no one is adverse to it, we're going to start with the usual meeting. And when we get before public comments, we are going to take our budget item 7A. So the sergeant over there may go back to his job. So we're calling the meeting to order.
It was like 2 minutes. Yeah.
And you want to call the roll?
Yes. Patrice Berlin she's here. She stepped out for a second, so I'm working as president. John Trottow is unexcused. Claire is present. Alex Becky here. Lisa Krogden here. Patrick Stewart. Heidi McKay. Did anybody hear from Heidi?
No, I haven't heard from Heidi. She's sometimes late, but...
Okay, I'll change the Richard Niederberg.
Here.
Eric Previn.
Here.
Craig Ratto is excused. Rob Schiller.
He will be here at 9 o'clock. He is in a meeting.
Okay. Keith Schwalenberg.
Here.
Richard Welsh.
In body.
Andrew Sussman.
Yeah.
Rita Villa present. Denise Wellbank.
Present.
Okay, so we have right now.
Five?
So we have 10 right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 10 present. So it will be 6 to pass.
Okay. All
Or
right.
everything but a bylaws, right?
Right.
Bylaws are 2/3.
Well, some of them.
Well, we're gonna.
Yeah, we'll get there.
I just am saying.
Okay.
Yeah,
Want to do approval in this, or want to just
I
move
think
to
let's
7A?
just go right to.
Okay, we're just going to go to 7A, and, oh, wait a minute, I'm not allowed to go to 7A until, until Patrice gets back. She's got all the
Okay.
paperwork.
So let's go ahead and do 4. Or
Okay.
2.
2, we're going to do the approval of the January board minutes. Everybody was sent the minutes. Anyone have any problems with the minutes? Okay, I believe we're going to
In the
approve.
absence of objection? Yes. Update by the president.
All right. Update by the president. Welcome. I'm happy to see people here. It's a nice thing. At our budget meeting, we had Mr. Previn was interested in discussing the absence of committee audio visual. While the budget committee wasn't the proper place, I think it's an important task and something that needs to be looked at. I would like to form an ad hoc committee to write a draft policy to put on what do you want to call them, the operating procedures. And since Mr. Previn was so kind to bring this to our attention, I would like to appoint him as the chair of the committee, and he can choose his committee members.
The committee to write a policy about recording.
Right, committee, so we have the transparency, and all of our meetings are recorded.
So you'd like me to form a committee to write the language for that?
Right. You're the person with the idea, and I think you have a vision of what it should be. So, I think you and whoever you choose to help you can write the policy, and then we'll put it through the committee process, and it will come to the board. And we can add it to the operating procedures, so we do have something that says all committee and board meetings need to be recorded.
Right, because we have already on our e-blast that it says all meetings.
Right, so we need to make it, we need a policy. And, it's 60 days, that's 2 months, whether you need that long or not, but you've got 60 days to come up with your draft policy.
Sure.
Okay? All right, great. Okay, we've done all of that.
Yeah. we go look for it? Yeah, does anyone know what's taking Patrice high hiding?
Well, here, should be? Yes, yes?
No.
No, okay,
I'll go look.
all right, because we needed, she is the person who has all the paperwork.
Let's go ahead with number 4 then.
Okay.
If you're ready to go.
You've got public comments?
I do, we have Gary Johnson.
Okay, everyone, it's a long meeting, so we're gonna actually keep time pretty strict tonight. So on things like this, you have 2 minutes, and when your 2 minutes are up, you know.
So a lot of times, we make a lot of policy here, and we don't know if it ever gets followed through and see an end result. And I'm happy to say a motion from a couple years ago asking the MTA to finish off a wall that was just boarded off with temporary plywood that was to be the entrance to a tunnel under Lancashire at the metro station, and then they built the bridge instead. And we had asked them to finish off that plywood that people kept kicking in, and they are doing so. And we asked them to finish it with the tile that the rest of the station is done with, and they are going to do that. So if any of you have been one level down at the station, you see a jutting out plywood but if you peek through, you can see they're working on it, and they've actually like entombed the old 5 feet worth of tunnel with like a big cement wall. So I mean, they could have put a time capsule in there for all we know. But just it's nice to see something that we've done getting acted upon.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Patrice is here, sign.
And I as well.
No, I had picked you up, Heidi.
All right, do you want to do 7A?
All right, are you ready for 7A, ma'am? Patrice, you ready for 7A?
You are, ma'am.
Yes. Okay.
All right. Shall we do?
Sure.
7A, motion A, the board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates up to $1,000 to repair the North Hollywood LAPD Station Force Options Trainer. There you go. And we have Sergeant Elton Boone? Sergeant Boone, sorry.
Good evening, I'm Sergeant Boone. I'm the training coordinator for North Hollywood Division. My function is to train officers, ensure they're within state policy, police officer standards of training are called post, within department policy with all their training. And that goes from everything from human relations to mental illness to firearms. When the stations were designed, and what I'm here to talk about today, is our Force Options Simulator. When the stations were designed, some in 1962 and built in 62, 60, as a foothill, our stations over 20 years old, they didn't allocate space or room for a simulator that we need to train the officers. And these officers shall go through this training. It's a state mandated training, police officer standard training, and department training. What the Force Option Simulator is the ultimate video game. Okay? It's a life-size game that's computer generated, and it's run by experienced officers and folks that have my background that are trainers. We use that for the officers, we also use it for the public. It's used for decision-making skills, de-escalation. So when they get to a scenario, the scenario goes off the officer's actions. So it could be an instantaneous, you got called to a bank robbery, bank robber comes out and he throws a bag of money at you. Is that a shoot or don't shoot? So we evaluate how the officers handled that situation, okay? It could be a domestic violence, everything's done, you kind of start to let your guard down, gun comes up, how do you deal with it? Typically when we put the general public through it, the community through it, from time to time, they literally come out sweating, because your brain does not understand the difference between real life and the video. Okay, it absorbs the officers. So we actually had it in our cot room. Each station has a cot room for officers to sleep in with a couple of cots. Some of them are pretty disgusting. But we put a wall down the middle of the cot room and put the Force Option Simulator in there. Well, somebody complained to OSHA that they couldn't sleep because the Force Option Simulator was in there and we're training officers. So we've had to move it out of there. And then we are now in a space, we're trying to build a space that was once a storage space designed for the garage to house this simulator. Trying to get the funding and things to get that built through the city. I could probably get it done by 2020, realistically, because of the allocation of funds. So we're looking from the community and wherever we can to help build this facility. We will design it with seating in it. It's basically a blacked out room that we have to get air conditioning in. So we're looking for air conditioning, ventilation. Last year we used it. It actually melted the $10,000 machine because the roof is metal and the room got well over 120 degrees in there. So it not only melted our computer, it melted the projector. And this thing is laser synced, and so it was the only thing the officers could do at the time to get the officers through it. Because during the months of June and July, every officer shall run through the force option simulator. It's a qualification for LAPD. The other issues we use it for is when we have high, I don't know if anybody saw the last pursuit that North Hollywood had last Friday. Big pursuit ended up in East LA. You have a driver coming at officers, trying to push cars out of the way. How would you handle that if you're thrown into that scenario? Well, after those types of events, we put the officers, after the training and everything has been looked at, we put the officers through the force option simulator to help them to understand how to do things better, how to improve, how to debrief, how to make it better. Okay? So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're asking for. For this particular event, whatever we can get, but we're looking at a projector, a soundboard so it has realistic sound. The connectors, the one we have is an old serial port. Now I guess it's HDMI. And if there's anybody in the community that has expertise in that, we're also asking. Because we want to make it a first-class facility. So when we have the large events, I can't bring in the whole community. It's a small room. But I can bring in representatives of the community and sit them in there running through it. Okay? It's very important. Before I came on the job, and I don't share much about this, but this will kind of drive home the point. Before I came on the job, I was in the Marines for 10 years as a sniper, special operations, been all over the world, trained SWAT teams. I was the pinnacle of what a lot of these guys that joined the military and play video games want to do. It's not what I wanted to do when I went in, but that's what I ended up doing. Came on LAPD. I had a young partner, January 15th, 1998. We went to a domestic violence radio call. Violent male, mental, possibly armed with a handgun, threatening his wife and kid. Get there, the house is buttoned up, all the windows are shut, don't know what's going on. 45 minutes later, the man came out with an AR-15, shot my partner, I left cover, had to get to him, shielded him, and returned fire, drove him back in the house.
Did he survive?
My partner survived, I went home, had to learn to walk again. It took me 8 years to get back to full duty. I would do it again tomorrow. But the difference between me and my partner is I came on the job with 10 years experience as a SWAT instructor in special operations. He was 2 years, thought bullets would bounce off his chest. When the incident occurred, he wasn't mentally prepared for it. Okay? So that's how quickly things change. We go from a containment to a house to, okay, we'll just keep him in there and talk him out. Well, if the suspect doesn't want to talk and he wants to force the issue, the officers have to change that mindset instantaneously, and that's what it's for. So that's what we're looking for. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Has the temperature issue been solved for where this new equipment will be used so it doesn't melt again in June and July?
We actually hired a contractor. Well, haven't hired him. We have a proposal out, and they're going to insulate the roof with special foam. We're going to paint the inside of it black, put soundboards in it. Have an air conditioning guy that came out to look at the air conditioning issue. Because there's no windows on this place, it's just 2 doors. So we're solving all those issues. My key is I have to have it up and running by about the 1st of April. So they can come out and calibrate it to jumpstart us into June and July. So those will all be issued, and the point of it, my goal is to make it as first class as I can make it with what I have and what I have access to. So I can use it for the officers and the public because it's huge that the public go through these things. We're afraid of what we don't know. And once the public sees what we do and how we do it and understand why we do what we do, and then we're within the law and how the law works, it's like a light bulb comes on and they get it. Okay? We don't, as police officers, deal with widgets. We deal with people that have free will and can think on a vast scale of from the low end to the super high end, and we have to be able to adjust and focus and deal with those incidents as they occur. And that's what it's for.
What's the budget for the whole project, and where else is the money coming from? And is there a continuing budget? And also, if this is so important, why isn't it in the annual budget of the police department or allocated from different sources?
It's a good question. I'll answer as much as I possibly can. It's not a budgetary issue. Our fiscal year goes from July to July. This was moved last July. The space was found and allocated last July. My counterpart left, was promoted last July, and I just filled the seat in December. So our budget is as shoestring as I can possibly make it to try to get this thing up and running, because that's my goal. Between the Marines and here, I was in the corporate world, so I know how things run budgetary-wise, but it's a different animal with the city. So PALS, Police Athletically, our booster organization, is going to pay for portion of the construction and the air conditioning. We just found out 2 weeks ago.
To the tune of what?
That's about 15 grand right now.
And the whole budget approximately, give or take?
Probably about 22. So, and that's on the, we're going with the lowest thing we can possibly get to get the thing up and running. Yes, sir.
So, thanks for coming. You mentioned something about the public. Will there be dates that the public can actually utilize the system?
Yes, once we're up and running, then we'll probably do it after probably August, September, when it starts to cool off. Because I have to have an instructor at the site, so the senior lead, I'll open the dates up for the senior lead officers to bring a select few. I've asked in the space that we have like theater seating for like high schools, a smaller version that, you know, there's like little bleachers we can pull out to seat. My mandate was 12 if the contractor can fit it in there. He's trying to design something. And then we're gonna have seating that goes along the side except for the actual working area. The room is 30 feet by 12 feet by 15 feet. It's not a huge room. So we're going to do everything we can to convert it, make it as nice as possible. We looked at actually putting a building on the site. We had some room in the back. We have a big cadets program and a basketball courts and some area in the back. We were looking at over $100,000, and it just wasn't realistic for what we're trying to do. So,
Question.
yes, ma'am.
So the original proposal that I got from you, from Fry's Electronics for the equipment was $1,814.33. Now, did you ever figure what you thought the installation cost would be?
We would probably tack on, we got a couple different, I actually called out to see, and anywhere from about $400 to $600 is about what it would, if they have to rewire. It depends on how the wiring goes. The contractor that I have doing it, I've asked him to try to put the wiring in the ceiling instead of putting it the way we have it now. We actually have one outlet and 6 spike strips hooked into it. We have to make it work. I have to get my officers trained. So we do what we can do to do the job we can do, sir.
Yeah, I've used a similar system before with the grand jury. Not here, not where you are right now, but downtown. I'm wondering, since the officers have to qualify an arrange using live ammunition every so often, you know, and it's not at Sierra, it's somewhere else, basically, not at Burbank Boulevard. Why can't the same thing, having they rotate in on the live and also on the projection. I've used the projection. I think it's great, you know. It's quiet, you know, and you change the DVD so the guys haven't seen things before. I did pretty well. I did a lot of times, therefore I got good at it. They wouldn't change the DVD. So see some of the same things. Are you gonna have extra DVDs, all the other kind of stuff?
Oh, yes.
that you can?
The way it works for the officers, not for the public, but for the officers are not allowed to see the same scenario twice. In fact, when the officers qualify, only one officer can go in the room. One. So you can't have folks watch and see what the video is. It doesn't do them any good if they're seeing the scenarios and they'll learn the scenarios.
Right.
And try to anticipate. I could run a scenario and then change. I can make the person passive one scenario. The next time he pulls a gun, pulls a knife. Okay. And there's different. You know, I can go on for hours on this. So I'll try to just get to the point of this. The reason we have 21 geographic divisions. I have 369 officers that I'm responsible to be trained through the state, through the city, on all the various aspects of training. Elysian Park has one simulator for recruitment and for some in-service. Okay, the most they're allowed to do by post standard is 8 a day. Okay. Per class. We have 10,000 officers, well, a little less than 10,000 officers.
So you could like take Davis and make Davis a major center for.
Davis has a facility.
I know.
And it's for recruits. So what I can do now is with each geographic division has their own FOSS simulator.
Okay.
So I can pull officers out of the field. I can also, as a supervisor, be in the field. If I see an officer that's having trouble with stuff, I can immediately send him and his training officer back to the station and arrange to have one of my instructors there to immediately run him through FOSS, him or her, and correct issues. And it's varying. Some folks, they get into high stress and they can't deal with it. They have to learn how to do it. So.
Anyone else? I think, yeah, George.
I just have a question, not for the officer. I thank you for being here and making the presentation. I have a question. We had I have a paper that Patrice gave us with a motion here, and the amount in the motion that we were presented is not the same as this one.
Correct, and I have no idea where the 1,000 came from.
Okay, so.
Even in the budget, the 1,000 never came up.
Right, so I was going to ask if there was going to be an amendment to this so that we could move on, maybe.
I think that we should make an amendment. I would propose an amendment of up to 2,000. I think is what we should do with this.
So I just want to be sure that
Anyone
Patrice
want to
has
second
studied
that?
this.
Yeah,
So
no,
he
that's
agrees with
fine,
that
that's
number.
why I was,
Right.
I don't know where the 1,000 came from.
Right, so amended to 2,000,
Yeah.
up to 2,000, okay, thank you.
Richard, and then we're going to vote.
Yeah.
So this amendment is by Patrick, are you making the amendment?
Yeah.
And that was seconded by Hyman?
Camouflage. I went through the FOSS at Fort Stanton and a few other places. Very interesting, very challenging. Everything he said is absolutely true. And those of you that are interested, I've mentioned this before, if you sign up for the Citizens Police Academy, one of the days you're there, they run you through the FOSS up at the training center there in the North Valley. It's very educational. You will never, if your neighbor says, well, why did they shoot the gun out of his hand, you'll slap them until these some cops don't have to.
So I would call question
So, yeah.
on the amended motion.
All right, it's late now. All right, question has been called, and we're going to do roll call. Alex Uzbiki?
Yes.
Andrew Sussman?
Yes.
Eric Previn?
No.
Heidi?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
Richard Welsh? Richard Welsh?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
All right, let's see, Robert's not here, and me. Okay, it passes.
Okay, so one no and all the rest are yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Not even the other neighborhood councils get.
Okay, who else
Yes,
had
we
public comments?
Richard Adams had public comment?
Oh, general public comments. Yeah, we'll make this quick because it's going to be a long meeting.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
In the good news department, the sidewalk construction along Ventura Boulevard between Coldwater and Whitsett is continuing quite nicely. They just about got the sidewalk done right there at the deli. They even put in handicap ramps on the different sides of the street where there weren't any before. And they're coming along nicely with the other stretch there that's all dirt where the hillside collapsed. On the less enthusiastic news point of view, regarding our perpetual homeless issue, ran into an article today that I didn't bother sending out, and I'll do it tomorrow the next day, because it's no big surprise. Turns out that we passed all these bond issues to raise money for the homeless to make housing. Well, it turns out we don't have enough money to make enough housing because the homeless all over heard that LA County and LA City had all this money to make things better for the homeless, and we now have more homeless than we ever did before. This is my surprise face.
Thank you. Anyone on public comment?
Yes, we have Peter Cole had general public comment.
Hello. Working?
Yeah.
Okay. One note, that speaker is hissing like crazy, so it's gonna blur your public record a little bit, so it's not gonna kill it. Throwing in something that I hadn't planned on throwing in, I'm a little confused about the procedure, because there was a yell from the audience about public comment, and I thought that comes, you have to, now is public, that's good. Now is public comment, and then you ask somebody, from the audience. It just seemed like he spoke out of turn. So I want to know, is that how, just so I know, because I have a lot on this list, I want to know if it's okay if I shout out and just kind of like take over whenever I want?
No,
Okay, so that applies to everybody?
yes.
Okay, that would be great to see. Also, there was an email that went out a while ago announcing that there was a seat open for the board, and it looks like we got a full house here. I haven't heard about a retraction about that, if something's changed, I don't know. I think it was, there were 2 seats, I think over there, that were the seats that were the possible open seats. So
We haven't heard from the city attorney, is still mulling. When we hear from the city attorney, we will give everybody an update.
Okay, it seems premature to put that out when a decision hasn't been made, and then to leave it hanging. It seems premature, and it also seems disrespectful to the board members that are still here. So I would suggest, and the best thing to do would be to put out an email and retract your statement. And I have one other comment. So there was a garage sale this weekend that I got roped into doing, and I just love garage sales, not. So in walks all these people, and then, whoa, there's a familiar face. So in walks a local community activist, and we start talking, and she mentioned that she heard that the VANC representative selected to represent Studio City at the last VANC meeting was dressed in shorts and a t-shirt, she said, with something inappropriate written on his shirt. And I've never seen any of you come to any meeting. I mean, he's got a jacket on, He always looks great, usually with a tie, at least it looks great, And I just wanted to know if this is how you all wanted to be represented at this meeting. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Call for public comment.
Okay.
Jessica?
Jessica? No.
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 No, we're closed. Jessica? Yep, you're up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Jessica.
I've learned I prefer to be mobile. Is this on? Yeah, okay. Let's see. So update on the NTM study. The 90-day period began in January. Once that period ends, they're supposed to then let me know who the consultant is I will be dealing with for the rest of the year for the traffic management program for Studio City. I keep my fingers crossed. The hike with the council member was Saturday, January 27th. It was great. I was the last person because I'm very slow. But it did well. We had 30 people attending. I hope to do something like that again. I would like to probably meet with some of the board members, maybe come up with some plans for the year forward in terms of maybe doing like joint cleanups or maybe joint hikes, something like that. I think it'd be great to do that. I noticed in your meeting notes that you want to do your Totally Awesome event again. So that's awesome. Speed Hump applications reopen February 15th. They're actually still open. So I recommend anyone who knows anyone who has too much speeding on their street, which is probably most of everyone.
Too much speeding?
Too much speeding on the street, yeah. They won't put speed humps on like main wide streets, that I can tell you, because I've learned from my own experience. But,
The Arch Drive?
what is it?
The Arch Drive that we talked about?
Yes, I already put, they already applied.
Valley Vista?
Already applied.
Where?
Does anyone else?
Where do you apply to get rid of them?
I've never been asked that question. I can ask, DOT would be the people, so I can find that out. I've never asked.
That would be on my agenda.
Okay. You have my email? Send me an email?
I'll get it.
Okay. I can give you my card. So applications are still open. If you need a website, let me know and I'll send it to you. I met with LAFD firefighters last week at the Studio City location. I'm going to be meeting with them again because I want to schedule a time to meet with LAFD and DOT because I had some significant concerns from the Fryman Canyon community after the fires that happened not in our district relating to a homeless encampment. Since that time, the mayor's office has started an initiative called the Very High Fire Severity Zone Encampment. It's literally the longest sentence of your life title. So we're supposed to get the information for areas of potential for high fire zone encampment. Right now, I do not have any at this point. But I will be meeting with them, and then I want to confirm with you guys, because I think it would be a good idea to perhaps have someone from LAFD come to a meeting here. To talk about some stuff that they do, some programming they have, as well as the issues of potential fires. Last but not least, the issue that has been significantly in the news is Recycla. We got a lot of complaints about Recycla. So the council member, so long story short, the program took 6 months to roll out. During that process, we could not bring them in to start the questioning process of actually doing the initiative, the policy that is. So once the program rolled out, the council member hosted an event, a town hall, at City Hall with all the top heads of the callers. After that meeting occurred, on February 13th, council member Mitch Englander issued a motion, and my council member seconded the motion, which basically instructs the city attorney to report back to council what necessary steps have to be taken to exit the exclusive waste franchise. So this is going to be a huge overhaul that will take place in the next couple of months. So I wanted to give you guys that information. If you're interested in more of that information, I can send you an email because it's a lot to cover. This is literally just overview of it. That is the biggest concerns I got was Recycla. And I have about 4 PPDs right now that are in process that have been on hold prior to my time because the city was not issuing PPDs and they have started reissuing them as of now. Any questions?
Eric, do you have anything?
You mean Recycla?
Recycla.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it
It's their
called
fun brand. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, the goal is, of course, is a decent goal. It's to encourage more recycling, less trash. It's a good goal. It's just, well,
Yeah.
in theory.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else? No. Heidi, anything? Patrice? Richard?
No, thank you for being here.
Of course.
I've got something for you real quick, Jessica. I emailed you, and I know you were out of you guys close on Monday, whatever.
Yes.
This isn't really an official thing here, whatever, but there's a lot of students are interested and have contacted me. Is there anything that that the councilman can do to help that possibly happen? What's that?
With the march, you mean?
Yeah.
I responded to one of you, Rita, and I responded to the person who initially emailed you.
Okay.
And she emailed me back. It was just like, oh, I heard that it's going to be a major one downtown, so she doesn't. But yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Because the council member is it's one of his passionate issues.
Something from like Carpenter down to the park on Moore Park.
Right.
The idea.
So I guess it depends. So how long you'd want it. So in some cases a permit would be necessary. In some cases it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like if it's just going to be a march on a sidewalk, you don't need a permit for that.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna have to take away parking, or you're gonna partially walk in the street, or if there's security involved, then it becomes a permit issue.
Okay.
So,
If it becomes a permit issue, I know that we're not really within, and not we, I mean these
Right.
kids that want to do it, are not really within the time frame. Is there anything in that kit?
they actually would be in the time frame.
They would?
Yeah,
You sure?
Yeah.
I heard it was 40 days. Is that incorrect?
45 days technically. But, I mean, this isn't like a major thing where you're having a block party and shutting down streets,
That's
you know
what
what
I
I'm
think.
saying?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's different.
It's a street closure permit that is required. That's what we're talking about, or?
I hope not.
Yeah.
Because then that would not be in time.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay.
But we can, if you'd like, we can work together on that, because I think it's a great initiative, and the council
I think
member.
yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk. Alex?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
I wasn't at the last meeting, and I just was curious if there was, with the water and power, I remember a while back, there was a lot of residents who had problems with water and power and like high bills. Have you guys seen through your office, like, any of those resolved? Or?
Oh, yeah. All of them have been resolved except for a few, and those people have already contacted me, and I've already spoken with them.
Okay, cool.
Some people have returned, like the bills went down after that situation, and then they came back, and then I put them in touch.
Add to that real quick. I've just been reading that the meters aren't being read properly, and people are taking photographs of their water meters now to know how much HCFs that they use.
Right.
So my question is, when this is happening, is there an accountability? The readers, are they being schooled? Are they being told, you're putting us in legal problems because of your inability to read a meter properly? Do we have any? Right.
I mean, they do have meter readers, yeah.
They
I mean,
do,
it helps
right?
with- Yes.
So the point being is that hopefully it's not stakeholders' responsibilities to read their own meters, to tell the DWP how much water they're using. Do we know where the status of these issues been? Because obviously it's been a big problem over the last year and a half. What is the status now that these mistakes don't continue? Because it sounds like they are. Sorry, but I'm reading on Nextdoor and these issues are continuing, so.
I haven't heard anything.
Haven't you been reading on Nextdoor?
No, I was just checking up because I just
Okay.
remember we had a meeting, we had a filled room of people.
Yeah, I had an Excel spreadsheet of like 150 names that he got, yeah.
Andy, anything? Lisa? Richard? Thank you, Joe. Barry?
I was just going to say, long-range goal from DWP is to replace electric and water meters with ones that transmit your usage via cell phone lines, I believe, and then there will be no more meter readers that could make an error. And the other thing I was going to mention is, in terms of LADOT requesting people that want speed humps, you had told me earlier today that CD2 has already exhausted the amount, I thought.
No, they're still open.
So I thought you said no more would be taken until September.
No, they reopen in February 15th. So they reopen every 6 months, and then they close and reopen.
So it's open from now until September?
It's open until they get enough applications, and then they close it.
So we can still submit more from Studio City?
4:30, the application was still open.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
No.
We have a lot to get through, remember?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jessica.
No problem.
Gibson needs to come up next. Gibson will probably explain why he needs to come up next.
Good evening, members of, Madam President, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Gibson Nyambura from Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. I just want to point out, highlight today's agenda in agenda item number 7, motion D. Just want to clarify that this MPG is problematic. Number one, it could be that even though it's talking about the operation expenses, we just want to make sure we get clarity as to what the NPG is, and if any community stakeholder or board member is a member of this 501c3, please make sure that, one, you recuse yourself. In addition, I'd recommend you could contact the city attorney's office, and I'm going to ask that this agenda item be tabled for next month to get clarity from the city attorney's office, because they did highlight there's concerns with it, just to make sure there's clarity, because if it's voted in the same manner, if the city attorney does find problem, this matter could be tainted and this MPG may never be heard about again from this board. I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that, and if anybody is associated with the nonprofit, please make sure you consult with the city attorney's office. I'm just asking for that. In addition, with sort of the matter that was brought to the stakeholder, if there's no board opening, when asked the board if they can put that information down, just as a request, as a recommendation from the item that was brought by the stakeholder about a board opening, as we make sure that the board has a full, if the board is full, we just want to make sure that community stakeholders are not misguided by the items. Other than that, if anybody has any questions throughout tonight, I'm going to be in the meeting, so please ask questions, and I'm willing to give assistance. But if you're concerned about any issue, please start with the city attorney's office to make sure you get clarity on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, Laila, we have Alequresh. Wow, I'll do it. We have a mic over here for you. Okay, guys. Excuse me, in the back. Yep.
Okay.
Board.
Good evening, everybody. Hi, I'm Laila Alequresh. I'm a consultant with the Office of the CAO with the City of Los Angeles. I have been spending the last 14 months of my life investigating public works programs in the city and the delivery of infrastructure programs and how we can improve the delivery of those programs in the city. Do you guys hear me? No?
Sorry.
Sorry.
The mic is on.
Can you hear me now?
The mic is on.
Is it better? So I had actually lost my voice, so it might be.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a brief slide presentation. So just as a quick show of hands, who was aware that the study was even happening? Well, yeah, you were paying. Yeah, so, okay. Yeah, so this is the 31st time that the city has attempted a study for these services. So obviously it recognizes that we can do a better job at delivering hardscape and softscape programs in the city. So this actual council file is on the cover slide here. It's council file 17-1311. It's 404 pages, so don't try to download it on your cell phone or your tablet. I can only take credit for writing about half of that, but there's a lot of supporting evidence from past studies and reports and audits based on the recommendations. So this was the report's objective. So basically the long-term outcomes that we want for our city in terms of these services are improved coordination among not only city departments, but external departments as well, like Metro and Caltrans. We want to make sure that these services are delivered in the most efficient and effective manner, and we want to improve the relationship between residents and government. So the specific tasks that I was asked to complete were to assess the current state. How do we currently deliver those services? What are some options in coordinating services better? And to develop a specific long-term plan with specific proposals for improving accountability. This is just an overview of the research methodology. So there were 6 different research groups. So I interviewed 410 people. So not only just the top guns, usually the bureau directors, the general managers, every council office, the CLA's office, city attorney's office, anything with the chief office, mayor's office, were interviewed as part of this process. So I lost my voice twice, and this is the third time I lost my voice in talking about this project. So you can see there's some other research groups as well. So what I thought I'd do today is share out some of the survey results. So one of the things that was really important to me is to understand the user experience, because a lot of the times we will initiate processes and programs in the city, but we really don't understand the user lens. And so I have a couple of slides in here about the survey results. And this was fielded in last spring and summer, so I went around and did an alliance tour, because I'm a team of one. So I tried to get to as many meetings as possible. So I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what those results are, and then I'm going to share with you the recommendations from the report. Hopefully you can read this. So there are 6 questions on the survey. This was for constituents. A similar survey was done for the bids in the city as well. Green means good, red means bad. Basically, this question is about rating the quality of the following services on a scale of 1 to 10. So green represents above average, and red represents below average. So the top 3 rated services in the city, and this is a list of the top 25 most common infrastructure services in the city, were recycling, trash collection, and bulky item pickup. So again, this was fielded last spring. This is pre-franchise. I feel like I have to qualify that all the time now. The 3 least approved or rated the lowest, that you can see 2 columns on the right that are completely red, so everybody scored it below average, with sidewalk repair. That's a brand new program for the city, so we just aren't seeing as many sidewalks yet across the entire city as we'd like to. And then weed abatement was the second lowest, followed by tree trimming. So I asked a follow-up question in terms of these same services, and have they improved over the past 5 years? So as you know, we went through a pretty severe recession, not only in this city, but across the country, and we want to make sure that even if we are scoring low on a service, are we actually trending the right direction? So the 3 most improved services, and this is the same order as the previous slide, were LA 311, 90% of respondents said that was the most improved service out of this list. The second one was street repair. So as you know, the mayor and the administration and the council have a very aggressive target of 2,400 miles. It's the most money they put forward towards street repair in the history of the city. And the third one was bulky item pickup. And I will be forwarding these slides, so if you guys want to review them in more detail, you can. The third one I'm going to share with you is, I asked of the programs listed on the survey, the same 25, if you guys had a wish list for your area, your community, and your council district, which services would you want improved first? So for CD2, it was street repair, street lighting, and street sweeping. So those are the 3 that were rated. What I filtered for a council district. If you compare that to the entire citywide responses, that's the box below the map on the right side. The overall top 3 were sidewalk repair, tree trimming, followed by street repair. So I'm going to pause really fast on the constituent surveys. Did you have any questions about the survey itself? Or, like I said, I'm going to send you some slides.
Just a quick question on the tree trimming. Are you saying not enough of it, or what is being done? Did you clarify? Because there's some horrific tree trimming in the city. You're aware of that, right? There are some trees that are trimmed that I can Google and on the first page and see it's completely wrong. And they're dying from trimming. So they top them. They do all the most egregious things. So is that part of the survey?
Yes. So I did specifically ask about that. Trees are a very unique situation in the city. If you look at recommendation 2.6 about overlapping governance, we actually have 9 different groups touching our trees. We have no way of tracking who's touching what.
Okay.
So I did ask that question specifically. It's in need of more tree trimming.
It's one.
In need of more tree trimming, basically. So all of these are improving or enhancing current service levels.
I have a similar question about street sweeping. Do people really request that? Because, I mean...
We get a lot of 311 requests for street sweeping.
We don't have street sweeping.
Yeah. And I mean, we only cover less than half of
because
street sweeping.
Street sweeping comes with the, you can't park on a certain day and everybody gets nailed for
Exactly.
that. But okay,
Yeah.
they're clamoring for it. Interesting. Thank you.
I have a question. Just, I'm noticing that most of the things that we're doing well are nice, but they're not really essential for a good quality of life. And most of the first one. And the things that are really core necessities to have a city run normally are either we're failing miserably. So I like all the nice window trimming over here on the left. It's really fun, the bulky item. I mean, all that stuff is nice. But those last 4 over there, my God, how are we supposed to actually function as a city when we're failing miserably in that? So is that something that you guys are going to start thinking about?
Yes, I'm going to get to that with my recommendations. I'm just setting it up here. So, like I said, I'm going to set these slides. There's 3 other slides that deal with data as well. This is the first time that I've actually overlaid multiple data sets for these programs ever in the city. So you'll see some interesting data if you actually look through the report. So I identified the 6 research groups. These are the key themes that emerged across 500 interviews, benchmarking with the top 25 cities, the top 10 in California, data analysis. So basically this is lack of. So each of these is a lack of alignment across these programs, a lack of communication, lack of coordination, lack of focus on the customer, lack of data or underuse of technology, and lack of proactive planning. So these are emergent themes across every single one of these research groups. So if you do have any interest in looking at the full report, every recommendation across the top is assigned to a theme. Every single recommendation has multiple barriers to performance, which is what I've themed these. So if you move here, the report has 13 recommendations. Tier 1 is about systems improvement, so improving the system in which all of these programs operate. The second one is support systems, so those are tools and activities to support an effective and successful system for Los Angeles. And the third is specific process and program efficiencies that came up in basically the bulk of all interviews. So you can see for Tier 1, it's about addressing all 6 of those barriers of performance that I just mentioned. So we cannot improve if we do not know our starting point. This is our starting point. Every single color is a different program, a different group, a different department in the city. If you are crossing the street in Los Angeles, you are actually crossing over a dozen different programs. They're completely executed, maintained, upgraded in a silo. So how this translates to you is if you drive to work or take an Uber or even cycle to work, we will shut down a traffic light multiple times to do our own maintenance for our own programs without even talking to each other. So we will shut it down for tree trimming, we might shut it down for parking enforcement, we'll shut it down if we need to come to the street for sewer main lines, we'll shut it down for any other things, but we're shutting down ourselves, inconveniencing you guys because we're not coordinating internally with each other. So that's not even counting the utility partners that need access to underground assets like the telecom lines or the gas lines, et cetera. The other thing that's interesting about this chart is there's a bunch of arrows coming to the boxes pointing to different parts of the street. So we're actually competing with each other and literally the same real estate across sidewalks in the street. We are fighting with each other underground, we are fighting with each other on the surface and over the street as well. Because again, there's no communication or coordination that's going on. Anything that is happening in terms of coordination basically is council mandated, mayor initiated, or a response to litigation. There's no organic, playing nice in the sandbox happening right now. Yeah. So the one thing I will mention too, there's 4 black boxes at the bottom of the screen. So that represents the citizen commissions in the city. So Los Angeles is unique in the fact that we have mayor council, but we have basically mayor council commission form of government. And I'm making a point on purpose here. DWP, which is in green, is for the Board of Power and Water. Commissioners, Public Work Boards has a majority. And then we have 2 commissions actually for transportation in the city from the 70s. That's the Taxi Commission and the Transportation Commission. So between these programs, what I found the most interesting is the interdependencies between transportation, which are on-street programs, and infrastructure programs. So basically, on-street programs need infrastructure to operate. You need the sidewalk and you need the street. So these are just examples where you are literally operating in the same part of the street. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but this is an example I was given every single time was our pavement preservation program, our 2,400 miles sits in Public Works. The striping function sits in transportation. So what this translates for you guys, again, is there's a lag sometimes between a resurfacing project and the crosswalk or permanent striping that happens in the street. It's because these 2 things are living in different places. Now they don't only stripe streets, they also do like red curbs, they do a lot of other things that involve paint. Pavement also does a lot of things that don't necessarily do with 2,400 miles. But the point is those 2 programs are parts of our process that live in different places. Right now, because we have this bifurcation, and I'm just flipping through here with some other examples of, again, you're just competing on the same space. Transportation has its own department, it has its own mission statement, it has its own priorities. Infrastructure programs and Public Works have their own priorities, their own goals, their own programs. There is absolutely no overlap in planning, and that's why we have all of these programs with the rainbow color chart that don't have communication or cross-planning in any substantive way. So really what's happening, this is just an extreme example, and this is because I saw the LA Times article on bike lanes, but because bike lanes is a transportation program, and pavement is a public works program, but they need each other, right? Because we put bike lanes on our streets. Transportation did not consider the state of infrastructure when they installed certain bike lanes on our streets. So 20%, or at least the LA Times article said, I think it was 19%. They've installed 19% of those bike lanes where we're getting injuries and liabilities on F streets in the city. So if you guys are familiar with the way the streets are rated in the city, those are the streets that actually require not only just resurfacing, but actually like foundational concrete work that we have never been able to fund. So basically we invited a situation where we marked a territory that was supposedly safe, but because they didn't consider the state of the infrastructure, we put people in a situation that's less safe for them. So I support multimodal transportation options. I don't support putting them on F streets. I think people should be safe. And if we had coordinated better across those things and had unified goals and planning, shared responsibility and shared priorities, that might not have happened. So this is basically what I'm recommending. Oh, I'm not going to read all this. Okay. So right now, they have transportation taxi commissions. Those meetings, and I have sat through a dozen of them, last 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, and I missed one because I was 5 minutes late. That is right now the citizen oversight level for transportation programs in the city. You guys have already met the equivalent of probably 3 or 4 months of meetings for these two groups. They never talk about project delivery, they don't talk about traffic signal timing, they don't talk about customer complaints, they don't talk about project delivery. None of the things that are the bread and butter of transportation programs are discussed in those meetings. So what basically I'm recommending is to transfer, and the two functions actually that they have is preferred parking permits and non-emergency ambulatory permits. Those are the two things they actually do. I'm recommending that those two functions get transferred to the Board of Public Works, so we have at least one level of oversight where there is a combined user lens and the infrastructure is in one place. So again, there's a lot of other reasons, as you can see in this chart, that I won't read. But basically, people have a hard time understanding it. So this is actually the reporting structure in the city. It's deliberately decentralized because we don't want the power all in one hand. The mayor and council would retain all of their current oversight over transportation committee, energy and climate, and public works. The commission oversight is the one that changes. So again, we have the taxi and transportation, and basically all it does is now all of those functions would just those two functions would transfer to the Board of Public Works. Everything else in terms of leadership, staff, programs, and funding would remain the same. This is the way to provide least disruption to citizen services, while also adding in a level of oversight that overlaps for the first time in the city's history. We have never had any combined oversight for these programs, ever. And just as a point of reference, when I did the benchmarking with the top 25 cities in the country, we're the only one out of the top 10 that has bifurcation in terms of how we manage infrastructure programs, the hardscape, sidewalks and streets in the public right-of-way, and a separation with on-street programs like transit and striping signals and signs. And we're only one of 3 in the top 20 that actually has oversight in different places. So San Francisco's the outlier, you know guys, they're 1/10 our size, and Austin are the only other 2 that I can find. So basically, putting those two together, not gonna break down silos. Like, we're not naive about that, we're making the department bigger because we now have a board that's over a bigger group of programs. So what I'm recommending is to create a dedicated group called the Office of Infrastructure Management. Their sole purpose is going to be looking at asset management, capital planning, looking at intersections of programs. So getting out of those colored boxes and really looking at intersections of programs. How are the users using the street? And again, we never have applied the user lens on the infrastructure side at all. We would just look at not the worst streets, but the middle of the streets and just go there and pave and update. And we never do that from the transportation side. We never look at the state of infrastructure. So right now, mobility is moving much faster than infrastructure can handle. And the infrastructure investments we need to make, even if it slows us down a little bit, if it makes it safer, they need to slow down. So this is a way to literally break down those silos in a consistent way, to look across programs, to do their proactive planning instead of reactive planning, and have a dedicated independent resource. This is already commonplace in a lot of different cities. Metro has an Office of Innovation. DWP actually has a corporate planning group as well. A lot of other cities like Washington, D.C., Denver, et cetera, also have this group, and they've been very effective at managing cross-sections of programs. And just to give you an idea, in the dark blue circle there are typical programs that currently live in infrastructure. That outer circle is showing you everything else that is pushing up against the public right-of-way, which we have no jurisdiction. So it's very difficult to manage programs and infrastructure effectively if you have all of these other things that are coming up against you. consistently, from regulatory agencies to other city programs to special city initiatives like Green Streets, and then other legal and environmental funding requirements as well. Okay, so I'm going to go through the 13. Well, I've talked about some of them already. I've talked about the first two. So basically, I've split this up into plan for the street, execute for the street, protect the street. So I've talked about the common oversight authority about the board being over both transportation and street-related programs. I've talked about the Office of Infrastructure Management. Utility coordination. So sometimes you guys see SoCal Gas or even DWP coming out and making a street cut. So they're trying to access underground assets for either maybe emergency repairs or utility connections or just for basic maintenance and upgrades. Every time a utility cuts into our street, even if it's our own city department or somebody else, depending on the size of the cut and the age of the street, we diminish the lifespan of that street by 20 to 50%. And just to give you an idea of cost, every time we resurface a street, that costs $300,000 to $450,000 per segment. So we're not coming back because the street life has been diminished, because we have a lot of streets that we need to maintain. But if you add up the math of 11,000 cuts since 2013, that's a lot of streets that have already diminished in terms of the investment we're making. How we manage this process right now is through spreadsheets and PDF, and 40% of that group's staff time is on the phone. That is not the way we need to manage the second largest city in the country with a 500 square mile radius. So what I'm recommending, and this was the number one thing that benchmarking told me from talking to other cities, was like we have to get a better handle on the visibility of what's happening, who's doing what to our streets when. So basically converting that process to an electronic system. So what would happen in that case is that all of these utilities, including our own city departments, would automatically upload the plans, they would geocode everything. You guys would now see a filtered view from the public. So you'd be able to see traffic lane closures, First Amendment protests. I guess if schools want to, kids want to get involved and have a protest of some kind, traffic lane closures, constructions from utilities, anything like that, it will be all on the same filtered view. I've seen the product in a lot of different cities. It's very effective. It's very easy to use. The other thing that it would be helpful for is that a lot of cities, if you think about development, there's guaranteed to be 4 connections every single development, right? We need water and sewer, we need gas, and probably telecom. So there's guaranteed to be 4 cuts somewhere around that development. And think about the amount of development that's happening in the city. Our Department of Infrastructure, Public Works, cannot see right now what's happening in the building and safety side. If we could see it, that would be a leading indicator. So we know we shouldn't resurface a street around a potential development because someone's going to cut into it 2 years later. So if we can convert the system and determine how many people are going to cut into a development at any given time, instead of 4 cuts, maybe we can manage that down to 2, because maybe the pipes are overlapping. And 1 street, or even half the street cuts, are going to be a lot better for our longer lifespan than having 4 different cuts into the street. So the last I'm going to speak to is 1, asset management capital improvement plan. Capital plans just mean very large investments. You guys know, I think somebody mentioned DWP has the largest water main replacement in its history right now. There are a lot of really old pipes. So the ones out of your home might be this big, but then the ones in the main arteries might be like the size of me or even bigger. And so they're making very large cuts into the street. Now, to get a better handle on where we should be investing those dollars, because they are limited depending on the funding source, we have to know where our assets are, what condition they're in, what age they're in, what location they're in. We do not know where all our assets are. I'm just going to be plain. So I was trying to do a back of the envelope thing for an intersection in every council district just to get an idea of like how much, if we had monetized the intersection and all of those programs, what would it be? What is the city's investment? And a lot of these departments actually do not even have basic asset information. So how can we make choices about a traffic signal or sewer main line if we only have limited funds, if we don't even know what those conditions are and what the risk and liability, the vulnerability is to the infrastructure network? So that's about planning for the street. I'm probably not making the city look good, but remember, that was a key theme, is lack of planning. So I'm going to pause for a second to catch my breath, but do you have questions on planning for the street?
Do you find that most of the people and agencies that you're talking to are excited about an opportunity to work better with each other, or are they entrenched and kind of defensive?
Yeah. Cultural barriers are strong, for sure, and I do talk about that in the report. I think the way I framed the recommendations doesn't hit the fiefdoms, because you have the Office of Infrastructure Management just helping you coordinate the timing of your maintenance activities, and so I've sort of avoided the fiefdom mentality by not attacking the power structure. I think people are excited. I think we've just never had resources. They've just never figured out a good way to do it. I don't think people don't want to talk to each other. I just don't think they actually don't know their counterparts in some cases.
It's a really fascinating process that you're describing. Very interesting.
It's scary. Yeah.
But so if you are this organization's help organizing when something's going to happen and what's going to be facilitated, are those organizations accepting that the people that normally were the coordinators are no longer needed, or how's that working?
Okay, so you're assuming there's coordinators.
Okay, so there's not.
Remember, everything is council mandated, mayor initiated, or in response to retaliation. That's the reason why you have a sidewalk program. We would not have a sidewalk program if it was not for the Willits settlement right now.
But I'm just saying, there's someone who facilitates, like, tell this guy on this truck to show up to work, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there are field supervisors that do, put out an outlay work plan for
so
their
I'm saying
crews.
is if you're not changing any of like what's going on in those organizations, are we creating a bunch of?
No, because what we would be changing is the planning and the coordination. So you still have a work plan. We would just tell you to go to location A versus B, right? Because we have 3 people and we're cutting to a street. We want to make sure that street is shut down one time, even if it's for 2 weeks, do everything and then leave it alone so you guys are not inconvenienced. That's the type of thing. So we're not really changing the work plan, we're just helping them prioritize the work. Is that helpful?
Just curious how long this has been going on. I mean, has LA always been this disorganized, or is this a recent thing, or is it because it's grown so much beyond what it could catch up with, or
So I did, there's a big historical context in the report too, so I wanted to figure out like why things look the way they do, like why is striping and pavement separate, right? And why are things housed in certain places? And I read reports back to the 40s and the 70s, and I've read a lot of audits too. So LA, and just to give you an idea, transportation actually used to be part of Public Works, but when it was created in the late 70s, for some reason they thought it was smart to move it out and to be a standalone department. I'm not saying that's a bad thing necessarily in that time. I mean, we were dealing with the oil price. I mean, there were a lot of things going on historically, just in the macro environment there. But what it led to that they didn't foresee was a split between the street management of the street itself and all the programs that operate on top of it. So I wouldn't say that we've always been bad at it. I think it's contributed because now the number of programs under infrastructure and mobility have increased, and that's just exacerbated the problems. So maybe if we were smaller and we had a smaller portfolio, it wouldn't be as bad or it wouldn't be as evident, but because of the number of interdependencies between these programs, I just don't know how we can do anything. I mean, we don't have a system. It's disjointed, it's fragmented, it's not working together, so we have to fix the system by creating a system. And to do that, we just have to change the commission level of oversight, which is $0.
Is there another city that has a good model that we?
People always ask me that question. So LA is LA, so I don't want to say that we can drop something from another city, but I will say that I did do a number of case studies in the report that identified these same themes that cities struggled with, and they did the same thing that I'm recommending in this report. So Dallas and San Antonio are 2 of them that have done it in the last 3 years.
Victoria, did you have something?
This is from a long time ago before you all were born. The city of Beverly Hills, in the middle of the night, closed all of their part of Santa Monica Boulevard, passing Calvin, because I couldn't get through it. At like 11 at night till 5 in the morning, they ripped it all out, put it all back, striped it, it was ready to go at 5.
So I'll give you an example. When I did an analysis of the 311 data, which no one has ever looked at, by the way, a lot of those requests that are coming in as potholes are actually not potholes, they're actually intersections. So if you think about a street and you have 2-way traffic, one part of the street's the intersection is actually getting double the weight, right? Because people are traveling through the intersection. So people are actually identifying intersections. It's very difficult to shut down an intersection when you have 4-way traffic going. And they've actually avoided repairing some of those areas because they don't want to inconvenience, or like council members say, don't shut down a street. But if we did it in the thick of night, when maybe at 3 or 4 a.m., which they can do that on a Saturday or a Sunday night, we'd be able to tackle some of those requests. And I'll just give you an example. The top one, it's like more than 100 requests, and we still haven't tackled that one yet. I don't know why, but it's not going away. People are reporting it more often. So, yeah, I think that's a good idea that I hope the Office of Infrastructure Management would try to do. Okay, so second one, LA 301. So I was talking about how the city prioritizes operational expenditures, or rather processes over the customer experience. I'll give you an idea. LA 301 until January was basically a public works intake system. There were 50 different request categories. Every single one of them was a public works category. And what that means is, although we take requests for 50 categories, we actually are not funded to deal with the service gaps that people's submit requests for. So resurfacing is a request category. Resurfacing is a preset program that is organized like in July or August at the beginning of the fiscal year. So when complaints come in about an intersection that needs resurfacing, we actually don't reference it and we close it. That's got to be frustrating for you guys. Because you're putting the same request, and if I put in a request and I become a rabid user myself, because I want to see what it's like for an anonymous user, I think close means you've done something about it. You've resolved my complaint, you've addressed my service gap. Instead, we're just putting close and we're not explaining to you what's happening. So a better customer experience would be a pop-up message saying, hey, thank you for your request on resurfacing. Click here and see if your street's on the list for this year's resurfacing plan. That to me is a transparent process that gives you information and you have a better idea of how the city is managing the program. And this is one of the few things that would actually require an expenditure of funds, but I think would be a good expenditure of funds because we're being transparent with constituents in the right way. So that's one example through and one, and I have some others in there. Basically, the city of Pasadena, for when they fulfill a customer request to build customer trust, they actually, if you're replacing or repairing a broken street light, they will actually send a picture of the completed request. So the field crew is required by protocol to take a picture, and that picture is included when the customer gets their close notice. So one example. We talked about overlapping programs. It's basically about urban tree management. We have 9 people, different groups touching our trees. We have no idea who's touching what tree when. There could be 5 trees on the street. Maybe only one is getting touched. Maybe one of them, DWP is cutting off the top because of power lines. Maybe BSS is cutting them for access. Another one's cutting to tree trimming. Another one, there's a nonprofit touching it. And so we just need even just a Google Doc. We just need to name the trees the same way and figure out who's doing what, again, to the trees, so we are not duplicating the efforts. We're able to address and treat and maintain our urban canopy in a way that it's required for a city. The pavement preservation plan, I mentioned 2,400 miles in the city. Right now, literally all we do is use a PCI score. Do you guys know what that means? That's just rating the streets on A through F. So the program targets B and C streets because A is good, D and F requires reconstruction, so that's about $1 million of investment versus $400,000. Basically, there's a van that we have in the city that has lasers on it. It takes pictures of the street. It writes the right lane of the city street every single day. It takes 3 years because we have the nation's largest street network in the country. It takes pictures and then they assign a score. So imagine that the street out here is done in year 1. We don't publish that survey until 3 years later, so that street is obviously decaying in the process, right? So what we could do to improve the process is to think about traffic patterns, accident counts, past incidents, proximity to schools, hospitals, senior centers, all of these things that, again, how people are using the street that we don't account for right now to help us prioritize where we should be actually paving. All we do is look at B and C streets, and that's all we do. I talked about bike lanes too. We actually don't even look at where there's a bike lane there. We actually don't know where a lot of bike lanes are. It's a different issue with DOT. So I'm just saying update the methodology so we can be more considerate of the users who are using our streets and our sidewalks. 40% of the department's actually scheduled for retirement in the next 3 to 5 years. What happens 3 to 5 years after that? Olympics. That's a state where infrastructure is going to be a large part of the presentation of our city to the world. That is a no-fail option. And there are literally entire divisions that are going to be completely eliminated and affected. So that's the top tier, the second tier, and the third tier. All of them are retirement eligible in certain divisions for infrastructure right now. That to me is a really scary prospect, so we need to really be emphasizing not creating a succession plan, but actually implementing plans, recognizing the potential cadre of leaders that we can train now and get them to positions, because these are very complex interdepartmental programs. They cannot learn on the job. We need to get them trained up and to be mirroring and mentoring right now so they're ready to step into these positions. And the final one is just contract processing time. So this is an extreme example, but I did analyze some contracts. This is what I found. If you guys do a home renovation, do you guys pay your contractor up front all the money?
No.
The city sometimes does. So right now, obviously, we don't have enough staffing. I talked about the levels of service in the survey slides. So we are partnering with contractors to provide supplemental service delivery. All of our city employees actually do have metrics that they're supposed to be working towards. We do not apply those same standards to our contractors. So basically, we want to have a standard pay-for-performance standard. So if you're required to trim a tree, and that's 100 trees or whatever it is, we want to make sure they actually fulfill those trees and that work before we pay them. Okay, and the last section, basically what happens when a street is not restored properly, and that's when they dig into the pipe. So again, that's at least 1 foot, 2 feet down into the ground. That shows itself. If they don't do quality work, the academic research shows that within a year it will settle. we know that you did not compact that correctly. And what happens? That shows up in 311 as a pothole. Those utility cuts are actually supposed to be warranted for 5 years. We do not have enough inspectors to go out and do a post-inspection test in 1 year. But we can, and I did, for example, overlay some of the most heavily developed areas right now in terms of development boom. There is a very high correlation between the exact location where there's been a utility cut, and 1 year later I pulled the potholes for the exact same location. It's there for a very large percentage of the time. So we actually need to be recouping those investments because, again, they're affecting the lifespan of our streets. I talked about resurfacing the plan, and the last thing I'll add is just about street policy. So when you do cut into the street, you're required to pull a permit, and you're required to pay a fee. It's called the SDRF fee, Street Damage Restoration Fee. It's based on the age of the street, and again, the size of the cut. That's from 1988. When the city council passed that, there was no CPI measure. So obviously things have gotten more expensive, our staff time's gotten more expensive, materials have gotten more expensive. We're using a 1988 standard. We are not recouping the cost for the extra maintenance for that street. So that's just one example, there's several others in that section of the report too. I've been talking a long time, I'm gonna stop now, but.
I have to say that we only allotted 25 minutes for this. Are you allowed?
Public
comment.
Okay.
I'm done.
Perfect.
So.
What time?
Timing's everything.
Any questions from Peter?
Quick question. I was watching the whatever Granicus City Council meeting online, and hoping to see Wayne or something like that. And I caught one where I guess it was the street service, whoever's in charge of street services, talking about his budget, and he said he gave back $19 million that he couldn't spend because he couldn't hire enough people, and then he sort of alluded to that the money went back to the general fund. So if we are getting dinged for these bond measures and whatever for street services, and something like that happens and somebody isn't called out, I know he retired, but somebody needs to be called out for that sort of thing.
He's retiring June 30th. I don't want to speak on behalf of the department head for that. I think there was some confusion because street services, like transportation programs in the city, are funded by a variety of funding streams, and there are restrictions on each one. I think what he was talking about was a restricted source. They did meet 2,400 miles for that year, so they completely spent that money.
I'm not they gave it back.
Yes, but I don't know if it was for the street resurfacing program. It might have been for something else. So I just don't want to misspeak for him. But I was sitting in the room when he said that, so.
Just an example of departments not talking to each other. We have a developer building a condo at Tahunga and Landale. He was told to widen the street by building in safety. DOE jumped in and found that in the new mobility plan, that Tahunga is already as wide as it needs to be. And we were within 24 hours of him widening it, and he didn't, thank God. And now we're fighting to keep the sidewalk width the same, because in Studio City, we've had a policy of trying to keep our streets and sidewalks as is, taking dedications but not acting on them. So just a good example of what you mentioned.
No, it is, and I'll just say that this is one of the things I referenced in there is that the city's mobility plan includes streets, even though they don't control streets. And so that report, even though it was adopted by council and by the department, was never heard by the Board of Public Works. And so that infrastructure that is required to implement the mobility plan was never taken into account by infrastructure. So that's, again, another just example of just fragmentation decision.
And they just figured it out that day. This was back in December.
Exactly. It's probably because of the committed groups like you guys.
All right, we need
Any
to move
questions?
along now. I
Okay.
hate to say it, but thank you so much.
Welcome. This is the council file number 171311 if you do want to download it. Just to let you know that this report, part of the reason I'm losing my voice is because I'm presenting this report. It is now going through the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee. It was also referred to Transportation Committee. I expect it might end up in Budget and Finance Committee as well. So if you want to track it, I think those meetings are taped.
What was the case file one more time? The case number?
CF 17-1311. That's CF 17-1311. If you guys see anything interesting here that you think is particularly important for your neighborhood, I would encourage you, because it is budget time, to call your council office and the mayor's office. And I've heard you guys can do something as a council, and then I think something can happen from the alliance. I'm sorry, I'm a consultant, so I'm not familiar, but I think you guys can make your voice heard. So.
We have two other quick public comments on this that we have to get to. Wayne Consino, you have 2 minutes starting right now. No, he doesn't need them.
I'd like to say, he's right about the give back of the money. They had $19 million and they had it prorated for federal funds, statewide. So what happened was, they found out they weren't using the money the way they're supposed to be using it, so they stole federal funds. So they gave it back to the mayor. The problem is that if the federal fund, you're supposed to give it back to the federal government if you don't use it. Well, they didn't do that. They just gave it back to the mayor and said, and the council, you handle it. This city's infrastructure, I've been to the Board of Public Works meetings, it is chaos. They have no plan to get the Olympics in order. It's going to be a disaster. They don't have the money to do the repaving, and they're not recovering the fees. And there's one reason why. It's the billy goat. They're so interested in what I'm doing with this goat, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, that they're not paying attention to the store. And the whole council is 15 of these greedy little thieves that are worried about filling their pockets instead of 15 people sitting together and fixing the city. This is very simple to fix. I can do it in 6 months. Just bring the FBI in and start indicting. Then when you indict this guy knows to get on track or retire. A lot of them are going to retire right now that belong in prison. So what you're going to have is a bunch of rookies going to come in, they're going to throw their hands up in the air, and they're going to go, I didn't do it, I don't know what to do. This is called plausible deniability. That's all this woman is.
Thanks, Wayne.
She's papering over a criminal enterprise. It sucks, and we're sick of it.
Thank you, Wayne. Richard, do you need it?
I'll pass.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, we're going to move on to bylaws, the budgets
Yeah.
on B.
You're right, yeah, okay. Motion be the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates up to $8,000 towards the return of the annual Totally Awesome Picnic. Rob Schiller's not here to give you the full rundown on this, but everyone, we had it last year, it went great. His date for this one, I had it written down somewhere, is June 23rd, if that works for everybody.
Right.
It's right after school gets out. There's a bunch of budget items here. I hope that we don't need to debate them all to death, but let's open it up. Peter, you have a comment on this?
Let's just go down. Motion A, great. Motion.
Well, why don't we just do it, Peter? We're just going to do it one at a time, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, so we're just on B right now.
Okay, so B, since I attended that meeting, it sounded like that for the food, for the burgers, that Rob was going to give them more money than last year. And I just wanted to know, it sounded like he would give them as opposed to them asking. So I wonder, is there another vendor? Do you have to, just a question, do you have to like get multiple vendors to see if you're getting the best deal?
Yeah, we'll look into that, and I think that everyone knows that Rob's not going to try to cut any deals or whatever. Honestly, it was that last year they gave him at a huge discount, and that he was worried about asking for the discount again. And that if they this time said, this year you got to pay full price, that would be what the full price would be.
But they haven't said it yet. So.
They haven't said it yet. And I know last year Rob came in under budget on this picnic, just a reminder to everybody. It was last year, I think it was up to like 55, and he was like at 49 or something. Anyone else with anything on this?
Yeah, I don't know how we got to 8,000. It was 6,500. It was listed as 7,000, but it was actually 6,500 when you added up the items. So it's jumped up a lot, and then I noticed that a related item, because it's T-shirts that look like
right now we can only do B right now.
Well, this is for the awesome annual Totally Awesome Picnic, and the next item is merchandise for that, so I think they're the same item. And it would be 9,500, 8,000 plus 1,500. And that was not my understanding. My understanding was the T-shirts were for neighborhood council overall, not for that event.
They are. The T-shirts that we would order, we would get about 100 T-shirts for that cost, and it would not, obviously.
No, but what I was saying, my understanding was that the T-shirts were not for that event, but were for neighborhood council in general.
Yeah, it says on there, it's for the Totally Awesome Picnic.
Right.
But no, it's just, like I was saying, we're not going to use 100 T-shirts.
Right. I think 9,500 is too much is my point. I think we should try to get competitive bids on some of this stuff and try to form a committee and hear from the people in the community who might have competitive bids on this.
Yeah, I think Rob's totally willing.
I'm sure he is, because he's out here right now.
Yeah, anyone else with anything on this? Anyone Do we have public comments on this?
Are we going,
Yeah.
are we going to like pass on it until Rob shows up? We're not voting on it now.
No, we can vote on it now. I mean, do you have any concerns?
I just think it's expensive.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know what we have left in the budget.
We have a lot, I mean, I guess, you'd be surprised.
We have a lot?
Yeah.
But shouldn't we know that number? I think Andrew's question.
No, I know, and
Valid.
Rob's
Why don't we
asking, does
move on
anyone
until
have,
he gets
do you
here?
have the updated?
But even if we had $50,000, we wouldn't just spend like crazy on one thing.
Why not?
Why don't we wait until he gets here?
Okay, do you guys want to just table budget until Rob gets here?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me. Let's go on to 8. Barry, you're up.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, before that, can you just bring attention to my motion D so that I can ask to have a continuance on it instead of tabling it? Can we just?
We'll get back to it. Is that okay? We're skipping over everything on the budget right now.
Yeah.
We'll get back to it.
Okay.
We'll bring it back for sure.
Okay.
Just a short report on some transportation goings-on in Studio City. Today, new parking meter heads were being installed on Ventura. I think all of Studio City's getting them. The new heads are 4G, the old ones were 2G. They have new plus and minus buttons on, and I don't know if any of you have ever used your credit card, and it automatically wants to do it for 2 hours, but there's a plus and minus, and you can make it less time. But 9 times out of 10, the minus button that never works. So before you can do anything, it's charged your card full amount. Anyway, the new heads have better buttons on them for that, so that was good news.
Are they smart, like they know the remaining time, 8 PM, and it'll only charge you 33 minutes if you're there at 7:20?
Yes, yes.
It won't
Yeah.
default 2 more hours?
Right, right.
And are they illuminated? There was always a problem with illumination in the old one.
I didn't ask, I stopped and talked to them, but I didn't ask them that today.
You talked to these parking meter heads.
Who are installing them, yeah.
Installers, because I was gonna say, that's.
That's how I knew, because I saw them doing it, so I stopped and asked a few questions. Also, Studio City Beautification is going to be adopting the new median where the new sidewalk is opposite the Hallmark building where the retaining wall is. So that'll be beautified. They're also looking into a median at Colfax and Ventura where there's currently cones. Jessica's already got bollards going there, but we might get a raised median there with plants eventually. The same.
Right here? Right here on
Colfax and Ventura, where you see the cones that people keep hitting, and every other day I stop and reset them. I feel like I'm working in a bowling alley.
Yeah, you
setting
have a
pins.
vest, you need a safety for
And the other thing is that you may see some beautification in front of the Beverly Garland Hotel, some trees, dead trees were removed. They're going to plant some new trees and maybe get rid of the grass isn't really growing anyway, so we'll see. And you may have also noticed there's been, in all over CD2, they've been painting lane lines. I've seen it like all over the place, even like on Tahunga. I was driving down the other day and it's like bright orange. And before it was so dull you could hardly see it. So it seems like they've really since the recession, they've started opening the purse strings for doing a lot of these things. So it's nice to see some maintenance being done. And that's all.
Do we have public comment for Barry?
We do, we have on Richard Adams on this.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No? All right.
All right, we're going to bylaws.
Bylaws has a 45-minute total.
We'll try to make it faster than that.
All right. That's a long total.
To begin with, the Bylaws Committee traditionally, all the years I've been involved with it, as long as I've been involved in the neighborhood council, really right now looking around here, I think only Rita, Richard Niederberg, and Barry have a longer pattern of routine, everyday, active involvement with the neighborhood council as opposed to showing up hither and yon. The bylaws is traditionally very much reactive. Something happens, somebody from the city on high changes definitions or whatever, and then we have to reconform to whatever our latest guidance is, and that's what most of this stuff is this weekend, or tonight. The youth member. It's always been traditionally very difficult to get a youth member to be on the board, and frankly, you all know my opinion, the board is pretty much a figurehead these days. The youth member is even more so. Now we have the youth of America today wanting to be involved in protest marches and get laws changed. Whatever we do with the city and the decisions we as adults, for various values of that term, make are what we're leaving the youth members who are tomorrow's adults to deal with. At the very least, having a single one of 15 members on the board, able to vote with the rest of you on everything but finances until they're 18, and then they do the appropriate homework, and then they can vote on that too, seems to me to be a reasonable way to get more active involvement, give us a wider variety of people, and frankly, as I've seen over the years, the youth member being a full participant, since they are in school traditionally, they're much more inclined to be ready to do homework on a routine basis, which means at that point, we probably have at least 2 or 3 board members instead of 1 or 2 who've actually done the background reading and paperwork and stuff. So when the issues are brought forward at the meeting, we don't have these, well, what are we talking about? Why are we doing this? So we have, in the past, talked about making the youth member a voting seat. And that's what this is. Motion A and Motion B simply changes our bylaws and our operating procedures to allow the youth member to vote on everything except finances until they're 18. And then once they're 18 and they pass the appropriate city requirements that the rest of you as adults have to do, then they can vote on the finances too.
Do we have public comment on this? Peter?
Am I taking that seat or am I sitting here? I can sit here. So we're just talking about the youth vote.
Just talking about the youth vote.
Okay. I'm all in favor of the youth member learning about the process. I'm not in favor of a vote. Nothing against Claire. I was going to bring pictures of you and Chloe tonight just to show that you probably haven't seen in a million years. I think that it would make more sense for the youth member to spend time in the committees. For instance, the Bylaws Committee, where from this past Bylaws Committee was, I guess I can address that when we get to that. Not a pretty sight, and I think you would learn a lot from being in the committees and voting in the committees, because you don't really see what surfaces here is only part of the story. The other voices that got voted down or had to curtail what they say because the bylaws chair is rather strong and wants to go in a certain direction and squashes voices, in my opinion. I think you need to see what goes on in committee, and I think that would be very good for you to see. Also, if there's a tough issue to be voted on, I would say that a minor is far more likely to be coerced by adults. They don't have as much power to make judgment or life experience and clarity to make judgment if it's a contentious vote. I vote no for the youth vote. Anyway, that is actually Nancy's comment from the Bylaws Committee. So, anyway.
Thanks.
Victoria.
Victoria? This is just for A and B. Do you have anything to add? On the youth members.
I would like to see any youth member participating in one or more committees and reporting on their take of the committee's actions and recommendations to the board. I would not want to see a youth member vote on financial matters. And probably a lot of the land use items. That's what they're not vested stakeholders. I believe that they are stakeholders on a other level, but they're not vested stakeholders.
Next.
Johnson?
Barry?
Just a couple things. Because of homework and getting adequate sleep before school the next morning, I think asking most students to contribute more than one night a month might be a lot to ask in terms of serving on committees. And in terms of the vote, you all vote on a lot of important issues, very important issues that aren't financial. And to me, it's like the person, either let them vote on everything or nothing, but dividing it between financial and other. The other stuff can be, like I said, just as important as anything financial. So to me, the argument doesn't hold to divide it. It's either all or nothing. That's all.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, we have Wayne from
Wayne, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I just think, agree with that. It should be a full voting member on all items, including financial. I ran my first corporation when I was 16 years old. I got a power of attorney. And these kids today, with internet and cell phones, they're more savvy and they're more up on most things than most of us are on a lot of these issues. So you're going to bring somebody in here, they're not going to be an F student. It's going to be a highly motivated youngster. So you put them on the board, you bring them in, you see what happens with the puppet, you let them learn. That way, these young people will know how screwed up everything is. Because what's going to have to happen is, we old farts, we're going to sit around and we're going to battle with each other. We need younger people to come in, put down the swords. They're not going to have any swords. They're going to walk in with fresh eyes. And they need to solve these problems. This city is going to be bankrupt and destroyed in 20 years unless somebody really steps up. We need the youth. So it would be a great thing to have a full voting minor member. If that person's 15, 16, 17, they should be able to vote on the budget and all financial matters and all matters equally amongst everybody else. It's only one vote, and the city is a corporation. It's a municipal corporation. This is a corporate board of governance. So clearly a person under 18, even a non-citizen, can legally vote on a corporate board. And that person should be welcome here to be a full member.
Thank you, Wayne.
All right, a couple of things. One, Gibson, maybe you can clarify this for us. My understanding.
Now goes to the board.
Gibson, are we going to get in any trouble? Is this a potential done?
I know so far, we've always, neighborhood council met and recommended to make sure that a youth member has to be over 18 to make sure that they vote on any financial matters.
It's a state requirement. That's what I wanted to clarify.
Eric?
Okay, so Claire's terrific, although I don't know her very well, and this is not, in my opinion, about Claire, but I'm not for the youth person voting, although I'm very for the youth being involved in the committees and for all the activities that we do. But the reason why is because often in neighborhood councils there's conflict and it gets quite tight and close. And I do feel that the source of the youth candidate, because she wasn't elected in a wide election. Even the last candidate, almost no youth vote in our election, as you recall. The last candidate who was elected was like 1 vote. So I think there's lots of opportunities for political activity and getting votes in high school and junior high school and in all those things. And I think there's lots of opportunities to participate in the community and the neighborhood council. But I think that the creating a vote is kind of like creating a doubler for whoever brought the person in, because maybe they'll disagree about, you know, the weed whacker, but when it comes down to it, it's just, there's pressure on them, and I don't want to see a young person in that situation. We can get we're all adults, we signed up for that. I think that it's not appropriate. Thank you.
Heidi, anything? Patrice?
I have a couple questions. Did you vet if there are any labor laws keeping minor at a meeting after 10 o'clock? You vetted that?
Never occurred to us that that would be an issue. The labor laws, I don't think would apply because it's not a paid position. This is a voluntary body, and if they have to go home, like any other board member that has to leave for a reason, they simply make arrangements with the president ahead of time to say, you know, at 10:15 I turn into a pumpkin.
Oh, my secret's out.
Yeah.
I also don't see anything on the motions about this is going to change our quorum. Shouldn't that be in a motion?
The quorum is a function of math. So, I mean, right now there's 3, 6,
No, I know.
yeah, but I'm just saying, so
Just saying it should
technically, it would be a minor change in that we would have 15 voting members on everything instead of 14. And I think Rita, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's basically not really a change.
Well, my thoughts are just, she's great, but I think at your age, when you've got school and you've got college coming up, and to have to put in any more than what you're doing already is too much pressure.
Next, Richard.
So I support having youth member vote. I think we set the bar high of expectations and let our young people rise to that responsibility. And Claire or anybody else who might be in her position, I think, can rise to that responsibility. I have a general question about motion A. Just how is that different? How is what is proposed in that motion A different than our current bylaws? And just a quick summary.
It takes out the ex officio. I forgot to bring my notes with me. I was busy doing a bunch of other stuff this afternoon. But the current verbiage, if I remember correctly offhand, the youth member is labeled as ex officio, which is non-voting whatever. So basically strikes that part out, and the other part about not being able to vote till they're 18. And so the vast majority of what you see there in A is the current verbiage minus the ex officio and the other little sentence at the bottom that specifies the age thing. And then the majority of the changes is in motion B, which is the operating procedures, which just clarifies, you know, what they can vote on when, and then once they turn 18, because it is a city requirement, which was my understanding and it's been reinforced, that they, like any other board member, has to take financial training, and then they can vote on everything.
That clarifies, thank you.
Rita, anything?
No, nothing.
Are we all looking at me?
No, I was looking at Claire.
You were
I
calling
mean,
me.
I thought Claire might have comments. I thought Claire was here.
There's
Speak
some
on it.
comment?
Yes, I definitely have a comment. Speaking as the youth board member, I first want to address a couple of things about committees and youth member, me or other youth member in the future. There are meetings, yes. There are committees that meet more often, and that's meeting. I can't English tonight, I'm so sorry. There are committees that don't meet as often. I'm on one of those committees that don't meet quite as often, and I think that, I mean, with all my homework, health issues, stuff, being a teenager, I seem to be managing it, and I'm sure that anyone else who, like, wants to have my position would do the same thing. Addressing the tense thing, I'm so sorry, the tense environment, I know that you can abstain from voting. If it's too tense, if it's too close, you don't know how to vote, you just don't. But it's nothing.
This is your time.
It's something that you can do. I mean, I've reported the vote, and I know that there is a column for abstain. And then people my age are the future. We are the adults that are coming. We are the regular board members that are coming. And it's maybe one vote doesn't really matter if people like me can vote or can't vote, but it's a huge thing just for other people my age, knowing that someone has a say in something where it's not all adults just talking and then nothing, not listening. Yeah, all right, that's fine.
I just said something real quick, and I know that this is probably the unpopular thing. Guys, none of our votes really matter on anything.
Thank you, that's what I said.
I mean, I don't know how else to break that to us. I know that it ruins our image of what we're doing here. But like the only thing that it really matters on, the only real tangible thing that we deal with is the financial stuff, which they're not gonna be able to vote on anyways. I don't know. I'm honestly legitimately conflicted on this, but I would just remind everyone that none of our votes are doing a whole lot.
Yeah, well, that's good to know that we're here for no reason, so.
You know what I mean.
It's kind
You know what I
of
mean.
silly. Anyway, Claire, you're a great person. Okay. This has to do with not Claire, because if it were and everyone was like Claire, I think that might be a viable option for us to do. The reality, though, is that there's a reason why there's a minimum age for things. It's typically someone who has a stake in the community, has skin in the game, deciding on whether there should be drinking after 2 p.m. or certain aspects of our community, which I don't believe a minor can fully appreciate, is what we're talking about here. We're talking about stakeholders out in the audience here who are asking for things that will impact their lives, and this is something that adults need to vet with adults. And so the reality here is that I agree with Barry. A youth person should not be compelled to be here as we are. We are compelled to be here. This is our job. We volunteered for this, and we have to stay through the whole, whether we go till 1 a.m., because I'll keep speaking. I don't know if a youth member or anyone under 18 should be compelled to do that. And because of that, I don't think that person could be an effective member of this board. Can they get involved? Yes, they can do many things peripherally that will eventually put them into our voting status once they reach 18 and are voted in. But again, I strongly think this is definitely something that we should be not that concerned with. I think we have so many other pressing things with our, I got 26 there?
Yeah.
All right, thanks. Much more pressing things our bylaws committee could be doing. We've already answered this issue with our STIP sheet. The city's already reiterated what their position is. I have no idea why this is coming back to our board. Please, maybe someone can open a dialogue why we're dealing with this again. Next.
I know why. Keith?
I'm also slightly conflicted, but I just want to say that I'm also pretty young here, and there's a lot of things that I don't have a lot of experience with, and so and I think back, there are aspects of when I was 17, I knew a lot, actually much more about the Constitution than I probably do now, just because you're well read on it, because you're learning about it in school. But I do think that it is most of what we vote on here has to do with a lot of things that are just not really in not in your wheelhouse when you're in high school, having to do with property and a lot of those things that I just think is just not appropriate. But I do encourage that you get to speak up and talk about these issues. It's not like we're not listening. We're not listening to where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think, a youth point of view is valuable, and if the point of view is valuable, so is the vote. And I really don't think the quote adults have done such a fantastic job to minimize the youth.
Lisa?
I think the youth have a voice and they should be heard. If it's Claire or someone else, it doesn't matter, but they should be heard.
This item, okay, would just restore things the way it used to be. When I started up neighborhood council, even way before that, going way back, that was the case. The rule was exactly the way it's been promulgated today. Why it changed the other way, I don't know why. Last year it did. I think yes. I think it is exactly the perfect compromise. Do everything but the actual allocation of monies is a good idea, and that's where it used to be, and there was no problem at the time. I would have noticed it if there was a hassle, but there wasn't one. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this that hasn't been heard?
I think we already heard.
Run 9A and B, Rob. Run 9A and B.
So let's vote.
Okay, we're voting, we have to vote singularly on A,
Yes.
on A and B there. Okay. we do that right. Okay, so we're doing 7B first.
No, 7A, 9A.
Okay. My sevens.
Can I just say one quick thing? When she said she can abstain if it's too intense, that because of the quorum, then that abstain would be counted as a no, so it still would affect the vote? No.
Abstain is neutral.
It's not, it's
It's
just,
neutral?
yeah, it's not
Okay.
counted as.
Only the city council does the abstain.
Hey, guys, we're on the vote now. We're on the vote now. Paul, are you good?
Okay. Okay, we're ready to go here. I am not even B. Cool. Okay, D. Okay, we have Alex and Vicky.
Lovingly, no.
Are we doing A or B? I'm sorry.
A.
Okay.
A, no, A comes first. Andrew Sussman.
Lovingly, yes.
Eric Brevin.
No.
Heidi.
No.
Keith.
Niederberg changed my vote, yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Patrice.
No.
Patrick.
Yes.
Richard.
Which
Need reduced.
can't be any worse than having me vote. I vote yes.
Okay. Mr. Niederberg.
Yes.
Rita.
Yes.
Mr. Schiller.
Abstain.
I vote yes. 7.
It has to
It's
be a
bylaws, has to
two-thirds
be
vote.
2/3.
8. We have 8.
We have 8, but we now have 12 people present.
The 8 passes.
It passes.
It passes. 8 of 12 pass. Motion carries. And we need to vote on item B.
All right, now we go to B. We'll go down this list the same. Alex.
No.
Andrew.
Lovingly, yes.
Eric.
No.
Heidi.
No.
Keith.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Patrice.
No.
Patrick.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yes.
Rita Villa.
Yes.
Rob Schiller.
Abstain.
And myself. 1, 2, 3, 8.
8 of 12, motion carries.
Okay.
I
No.
don't know the pressure's going to be on, Clay.
Oh, and in passing, Mr. Keith, if you and I could find some time offline, it's long been my idea that we should do more to get youth members involved in various committees, for the various, of growing our next youth member and getting, it's also a good way to get the word out to the community that these committees exist and they do.
Let's go on to motion C.
All right, thank you for allowing me that diversion. Okay, this I like to call the Truth in Advertising Notice. It simply reads, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves adding this informational message to stakeholders on its webpage as a precursor page to the bylaws and operating procedures links. Right now, you go to our webpage and it says resources, and you can click on our bylaws and they pop up in a PDF, or the operating procedures pop up in a PDF. Okay, this message would be, when you click on either of those links, this message would pop up first, kind of like, as I said, Truth in Advertising, and then you could go forward to either the bylaws or the operating procedures. And the message would read as this. The bylaws and operating procedures of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, SCNC, have been painstakingly crafted from the official template provided by the city, often via direct quotes, and reflects the unique nature of Studio City and the experiences of the board over the years since their initial adoption. Each and every change to them has been voted on by the board and then approved by the city prior to the taking effect. However, these documents are not to be considered by SCNC stakeholders as hard and fast rules for the conduct of board activities, but rather as more as a nebulous set of guidelines, since they can and have been arbitrarily and preemptively changed, reinterpreted, abrogated, ignored, or discarded by various city agencies, such as the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, VANC, the offices of the city attorney, the city clerk, and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, done without any explanation or justification to or consultation with the board of the SCNC. Stakeholders should consider the contents of these bylaws and the subordinated operating procedures in that light. So, I mean, there are people at this table right here, and people in this audience, who've relied on the bylaws to say X, Y, Z, and then suddenly the city goes, au contraire, Moose Breath, that isn't what they say. And no, to remove somebody, you don't just do this and this and this, and no, half the things you brought up can't be brought up, and only these things can be done.
All right, so we'll open up to public comment.
But that's why we're doing this.
Okay, Peter?
Okay, so the only person that I really see on the Bylaws Committee that really has their act together is the parliamentarian, Nancy. She laughed after he presented this, just to let you know. And the take is that C, D, and E all appear to be a personal agenda of the bylaws chair. There was so much anger and hostility in presenting all these things. He insulted the city attorney, he insulted the public, he insulted the board, everybody. And, you know, this is like, it just reads like a child who's mad at the world and gets to drive the family car and do something stupid here. This is really childish and needs to be shut down. And I'll add to it that if you want to send it back to committee, send it back to committee when you get a new bylaws chair.
Is that it? Who else is on this?
Victoria, I think.
Victoria?
Back to the-
We'll get to everybody. Victoria?
I was at this meeting, and I agree with Peter. Sadly, I agree with Peter, because I believe that the chair does have a lot to offer. He has a lot of knowledge, and I would like to see him deal with his anger issues. But what I have to say about this motion is it contains language which is inappropriate, petulant, vitriolic, and denigrate city employees and officers, which probably will create a hostile attitude for city personnel who we all have to work with. Please strike this motion as written.
When can we see him?
Here we go. 2 minutes to start it.
Yes, so it's Billy Goat, as I like to be called here. I think it's great. I like the anger, I like the frustration. I think it's excellent that we finally have somebody that tells these city employees, these mafia thugs, as they will, downtown, that somebody in the 88, 90 city councils are standing up like the Revolutionary War and being counted, yes. So I agree that what you do here is good work, a lot of it, and then it gets flushed down the toilet once Paul Kerkorian gets back from the restroom. So yes, I fully support all of this, except I would like to add that the views expressed here are the puppets and the puppets only, and that would, I think, give you some cover, so please vote yes. Thank you.
Barry?
Just in terms of a precursor or introductory page, I hate to see the word nebulous. I don't think that belongs, I can't think of anywhere it belongs on our website. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Eric?
I'm against it.
Okay. Heidi?
Nothing to say.
Patrice? Richard?
Yeah, I think that if your objective is to turn people off when they look at the website, this would be a good way to do it. It just doesn't seem a constructive approach to me, and I'm against it.
Rita?
Yeah, I have a problem because our website is not updated. So until we address the issues with our website and getting our website properly updated, I think putting anything else as a pop-up is just not feasible. We need to fix the website before we address anything else.
I'll say something. Are you ready?
You can go for it.
Okay. You know what? I kind of understand someone's sentiment to be frustrated, and but this is absolutely ridiculous to put this on a website. You know, if someone doesn't like how we're running this, leave. Just leave. Go home. Don't be part of the board. If you feel we're completely ineffective, go home. But we're trying to do something here as volunteers to push forward our votes, and as Barry had mentioned, a lot of our productivity does get heard, and I think our councilman does listen, and we do move forward ideas. So somehow this defeatist idea, you're chairing, sir, the board of the committee of bylaws, and you're bringing forth stuff like this, which is very unproductive, and quite frankly, as many people have echoed, I believe is ridiculous and needs to have a change. So hopefully, we'll start looking at some changes with our bylaws committee. Absolutely no, ridiculous.
No comment.
Sussman? Lisa?
No.
Richard Niederberg?
Don't, obviously, I think that the however paragraph would have to go. It doesn't, leaving it, just getting rid of that would not eviscerate the whole thing. I think that basically we cannot have that paragraph. I think that we would be looked at very unkindly by people we have to report to or at least advise.
Excuse me, did you vote yes for this motion? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get, did you vote for the yes for this motion?
No.
Doesn't the committee have to have a...
Does it have a passed motion?
Have a passed motion?
He voted yes. He said the board should decide on this.
Well, right, I said we should go to the board without comment. I said we should not recommend one way or the other. Lay it out there and let the whole board decide.
Was that a vote?
It was not a recommendation.
I thought we were just commenting.
We're going to vote right now.
He's talking about
We're
voting, he's talking about voting in the committee.
Okay,
meeting.
all right.
And before you vote, I want you to
No,
mention...
no.
Okay, we're voting. This is not a financial, so all we have to do is raise our hands.
Correct.
Correct? All right, everybody who's against the motion, raise your hand. All right,
That was easy.
yep. That's what I thought.
So was that unanimous no?
Yep.
Did you vote?
Oh, abstain. I was like, it wasn't.
That's
She
not
has
an
to
amendment
take
to
the
the bylaws
ethics
yet.
and-
Okay, so D.
Well, that's to be approved, right?
That's right.
That's like months away.
All right,
But
let's go to motion
goes
D.
forward.
She can't vote for months.
Correct.
Motion D, once again, this is reactive to the city attorney's office telling us that the plain language of our bylaws is unclear. So rather than get involved, it was suggested that we go through and redefine all the terms used in our bylaws, which would have been thousands of characters, lines of text, dozens of motions, and an exercise in futility that I didn't think my committee wanted to do, and I knew this board didn't want to do. So simply, this adds a new article, number XV 15 in Roman, to the end of the bylaws, says definitions, which reads as follows. For the purposes of interpreting and following the bylaws and operating procedure of the Studio City Neighborhood Council, all words used therein will be deemed to have their usual, customary, and generally accepted definition of meaning and daily use, as given in the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary and successors, and the link to that. It addresses the problem that the city council, that the city attorneys raised and Dunn raised without wasting a whole bunch of time and having to redefine every single paragraph in both documents.
Public comment, Peter?
When you guys all got on the board, I believe it was Eric Previn who wanted to take a look at the bylaws, because we had a lot of issues with the election, and a lot of things need to be addressed in the bylaws. I've looked at bylaws from other neighborhood councils. Some of them are a mess, some of them are very clear. So this is another attempt at trying to, a curveball here by your bylaws chair. He's trying to make a definition of something fit something else following. I think to waste the board's time and the community's time with this nonsense, I just got to say that, Denise, I think the bylaws chair serves at the pleasure of the president, I believe. Tell me what pleasure there is in this kind of nonsense wasting of time.
It's really cool.
You know, we were asked for a definition, they needed to find a definition. It's like, they brought it. We'll go back to the drawing board. You know, the board was asked, and the bylaws was asked,
By whom?
for the city attorney, to define our words. So they were charged with defining our words.
Can you send me that document? I've never seen anything like that.
I can't send you the city attorney document.
Should I just turn around and ask away?
The board has seen that.
The board
has
seen,
seen
the
that.
board knows that that request was made. All the board members saw it, but it's communication from the city attorney, we're not supposed to share it.
Yeah. So they were told to define what the words meant that the city attorney did not appreciate.
Well, once again, speaking to that, which I have a little something written for the next item, I think this is extremely clear what I have written here, and I think you've got bylaws that have holes in it, and you're trying to apply, this goes back to this whole thing where you're trying to remove Eric Previn, and you're trying to jam a definition into something that doesn't exist, so anyway.
Okay, next public comment? Who do we have?
Barry.
Barry? Okay, Wayne, your 2 minutes to start it.
Go ahead, Mr. Gold.
Yes. So I think that the Merriam-Webster dictionary is the proper way to go. It's accepted by federal courts. For example, in the recent case of Spindler versus City of Los Angeles, the federal court used that dictionary to define the term gadfly, which in British law is an asshole, yes. So I think that that's a good thing. And if it's good for the federal court, it is good for this neighborhood council to use the Merriam-Webster online dictionary because we're too cheap to buy the actual 8-volume set that's made out of London, England. So we just use that online for free. And we will clarify all words in their customary usage, and we'll tell the city attorney to stop it by going around and making legal justifications. So the chair of the bylaws is a genius, and he is doing the good work of the people. Thank you, and I ask for unanimous consent vote. Thank you.
And with faint praise. Okay, Eric?
I'm sorry.
No.
Victoria
Oh,
Schiller
sorry.
also had a comment.
Victoria, do you have anything to add on this?
This was another very contentious issue at that meeting. And this was I want to say a forced compromise of trying to solve this issue. I'd really like to, if it was up to me, I'd like to see it go back to the Bylaws Committee to discuss it in a quieter time, a more less contentious time.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I don't think it's a appropriate thing to stick in the bylaws because there are different definitions in Merriam-Webster for different words. It's just another layer of, I think that the member of the public got it right. There was an effort to invoke a rule that is in the bylaws about unexcused absences. And everybody knows I attend meetings and do my best, and I left early once or so. But this was a weird, yeah, it might be 3 times in the history of all the time. But that's more, you've been absent more times, Lisa, if you're looking at me. And certainly Rob was gone for months and was out until 9 o'clock tonight. You were out at the meeting for an hour or half an hour during the meeting tonight, and that wasn't excused. So it was just a little political game to try to throw me off the board. And it failed, and then the president sent out that weird email. So I'm against this kind of, this is all adjusting and trying to sharpen the blade. And, you know, it's ridiculous and it's embarrassing. And the woman, Ms. Kremer, who is not from our neighborhood but agreed to help out, couldn't believe it, is what I was told. So why were we wasting the board's time? So go for it.
Heidi?
No comment.
Patrice?
So I think the dictionary, that doesn't necessarily apply. It doesn't, it's not defined. It's like, okay, if you're going by absent is not here, so if, let's say, I show up at the meeting for roll call and I leave, that's not defined in what you're writing here. Nobody knows, and I'm sure if Eric had known that if he had to leave 10 minutes early, that he had to tell you, or if anyone here is, everybody at some point has left early or gotten early, and maybe not everyone, but I'm just saying there was no definition as to what's early or what's an absence and what's not. And the dictionary certainly does not define that. So I think you need to go back to the drawing board and if you looked at any other any other neighborhood councils that had, I want to read something from another one. This is how they figured out their attendance, because they were having issues too. It says, meeting attendance shall be recorded in the meeting minutes, noting board members' arrival and departure time. An absence shall be recorded if a board member is not in attendance for more than half of the meeting's duration. So, and that took care of everything. It didn't need all this other verbiage about the president can decide this or that or whatever, you know? It's, if you miss more than half the meeting, then that's an absence, unless you have the president's dismissal, you know, for other reasons, for not being there. But that's so simple, instead of paragraphs and paragraphs and explanations, well, if this happens or that happens. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of a punt. It misses the point, really, of the requirement. Not every word in our bylaws has to be defined by the dictionary, but certain key terms, I think, need some definition and some clarity. But we're not going to solve that problem by just referring to the dictionary. As far as being reactive, that's an approach, but I'm not sure that it's the right one. There are a lot of issues that the bylaws committee can take up, and there certainly have been other issues which we could have reacted to as a board, but were not taken up. So I think, yes, be selective and consider the value of the board's time.
Rita?
I'd like to suggest that this motion go back to the bylaws committee to address the specific areas that need definition, as opposed to referring the whole thing generally, because I think a number of people here have made the point tonight. They can see that there's a problem with the definition of absences or the definition of what is an absence, and that addressing the thing, even though it's difficult to do, that addressing it specifically is more appropriate than just referring it to the dictionary, which is not, the dictionary is not going to cover the specific example that Patrice just gave, which was a salient example, in my opinion, of if you're gone for half the meeting or not half the meeting. There's a lack of specificity in just referring it to the dictionary that doesn't cure the situation, so.
Okay, well, then my committee will need a list of...
No.
My committee will need a list of words from the board that need to be defined.
I recommended not going back to bylaw.
Yeah, hold on. Wait a minute. You already had your turn. You had your turn. Right now, it's Denise's 2 minutes. Go for it.
No. I agree that these need to go back to, it would be in their best interest if they go back to the bylaws. I thought which NC you read that from, but something more akin to that, I think, is what's necessary. And I think it needs to be addressed there and then brought back.
That's the board's prerogative.
Okay. I'm going to say it. I hope that this doesn't go back, because if it goes back, it might come back here, and this is a waste of time. I love you, Richard. I think you're a great guy. We're all volunteering here. I'm sure everyone has things they'd rather do. I get it. You don't want Eric on the board. We get
That
it.
has nothing to do with it.
This is what all of these are about.
These
This is
were
what all
brought
of these
to
are
me.
about.
All right.
Arguments.
No,
These
this
were
is-
brought to
this
me.
is-
Don't
this
insult
is
me.
not-
Richard.
Hang on.
I'm
This is not a back and forth, please.
Well, he's attacking me. I'm not
Just please.
Obviously,
Listen.
all of these are about Eric. We get it.
Are you the anonymous guy, Richard?
Eric,
Are you the anonymous
Eric,
guy making complaints?
Eric.
Dude, I'll spit in your face. I don't have to
Hey,
speak up
all
on
right,
it.
that's it. Done.
Okay.
Go sit.
I think Denise should change bylaws chairs today, right now.
Not right now.
Can we
I
still
think,
go through the opinions, please?
Yes, it's
I need an
tabled.
excuse
We're
that,
done.
because I cannot be threatened to be spit in my face. That is the most appalling thing I've heard since earlier today, when he sent out a weird, it's not cool, okay?
No. No, okay.
Gibson, do you have anything to add?
I'll follow up with the board in the first thing in the morning after the result of the situation of this matter.
We should get the city attorney at these meetings, I think.
We still have to follow protocol.
I don't think he wants to play.
Everyone needs to give an opinion.
All right, then,
We're sending it back.
we're done with my.
Wait, no, we're still, no.
There's still another
We're
item.
still,
Rob Schiller, hold on, everyone.
Hey,
Hey, guys, right now, Rob Schiller has 2 minutes to speak on this.
So the only thing I want to mention is because since I was brought into the loop on this for some reason by Eric, I feel like I have to explain or defend my 3 months just gone. I wasn't just gone for 3 months. I asked for excused absence and was granted excused absence for 3 months. I asked if someone else could cover my job, and that was taken care of. So I appropriately asked for the time off. I asked if it was a problem. If it wasn't, happy to resign my post as treasurer. If you want to vote me off the board, start voting me off the board, Eric. But I was excused for those 3 meetings, and it was not just a disappearance. So I just want to clarify, I went by the rules on it, okay? Thank you.
So we've tabled it, right?
Well, I still think people need to speak to it because we need to align what they're gonna bring back to us. Excuse me,
We're done with bylaws.
we're done with bylaws.
It was
Have we-
going back.
Everything has been
That's it.
tabled.
But why did we suddenly table it? Who said to table
Because
it?
it's falling apart.
Well, it doesn't matter whether it was falling apart, I think we need to speak to it. We still need to go around the
We
table.
are done with bylaws.
We're not done.
We are
We still have
done
to
with
opinion, we have an
bylaws.
opinion on it. Excuse me, we are going through with an opinion as to what's been presented to the board.
It's been
As a
tabled.
point of order, it cannot be unilaterally tabled. Who tabled it? Who voted to table this? Did you vote to table it?
No.
No, I made the suggestion.
You made the
And then-
suggestion, but we have to vote on
And
it.
then Denise spoke.
Well, wait a minute, point of order, excuse me.
Hold on, Gibson has something to say, let's let
Quick
Gibson
question.
talk
Do
real
the
quick.
bylaws state if the president can table a specific agenda item in this matter? Can we refer to the bylaws?
Yes, you tell her.
The matter? But my suggestion is, as a contentious matter, just to be procedure, I'd definitely, if the matter needs to be tabled, I'd recommend someone bring up a motion, somebody second it.
But don't you think protocol allows the board to speak to what was presented
Guys,
to
you
them?
know what? You know what? If we had just allowed everyone on this side to speak, we'd be done with this by now.
Right, okay, so
I
stop.
just recommend to the president and the board, if they want to finish the conversation,
Okay.
finish it and then table the
Why
matter.
don't we just finish it?
That's
There's
what I'm
5
saying.
people left.
Okay, can everyone
Let's
just
them
let
talk.
people
Alex, you have 2
speak?
minutes
Thank
right
you.
now.
Basically, what I'm seeing here is that we could have just resolved this with definitions of these specific issues of absence and tardiness. But yet, our board, our committee chair did not do that. He wrote drafted this insane thing here that I see is just completely nebulous and doesn't really make a lot of sense. So, my point is that definitions are all relative to what we're talking about here. What is a tardy? Just like Richard Welsh mentioned. If you work at a coal mine, being tardy is probably going to involve something else than, say, if you work at a school. It just depends on the scenario, the surroundings. So again, I don't know why we've gone to this, but we could have just approached this as just making definitions for these specific 2 issues of attendance, tardiness, and absence. So that just tells me that our chairmanship of this committee is obviously not on the same wavelength as just typical opinions that have been brought forth. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Alex.
No one made you resign.
Oh? No, I had to,
We're
believe
done.
me.
Richard, Mr. Adams.
Keith, do you have 2 minutes?
more.
Do you have anything to add?
No comment.
Okay, Mr. Sussman?
No comment.
Lisa?
So, just to be clear, my apologies for not knowing that we had moved on to the motion that we were on, but it would really be appreciated if you dealt with your colleagues on this board, your board members, with respect. You don't have to come out on the attack every single time by naming people off the board to get your point across. Please, it would be so appreciated.
That's not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Niederberg.
We could take a lot of personalities out of this if we would just take our vote sheets and our attendance sheets and just count the numbers, who's there, who's not there, officially on the record, without having any kind of personal opinion, no adjectives, no adverbs, purely based on the numbers there, the numbers not there. seems like it's easier to find that way, more clear, there's a lot less arguments.
Okay, thank you. So,
So this was tabled and gone back, and we're done.
but we've already had public
We've already had
comments.
already had public comments, thank you.
Are you done to get to SCNC 77? I mean, there was people want to speak.
Hold on. Yes, Gibson?
I just want to highlight the interaction between the Bylaws Committee Chair and one of the board members has been documented, and I'm just taking notes as to what the words have been exchanged between board members.
Okay, thank you. We got to move on.
We've
It's-
already done public.
We got to go back to budget now. We got to go back to this. Rob's here now to explain the totally awesome picnic, huh? Hey.
Hamburgers?
Yeah.
But I'm like, what about government affairs?
All right, we got to go back to this.
We're back to budget.
Okay.
And then we'll go back.
The budget was number 11.
No.
No,
we've been-
7.
Yeah.
We get 7.
Okay, 7B, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates up to $8,000 towards return of the annual Totally Awesome Picnic, and now that he's here, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rob Schiller.
Hi. So I sent the board the budget. You all should receive my, the application to the city and the board, and the breakdown. I'm asked for more money this year because, if the committee that we're gonna form still wants Johnny Rockets to do what they wanna do, they did it for a price break and they're not gonna do it twice for. So whether we go with them or we don't, we have to pay more money for food this year to feed 350 people. So I asked for another $1,000 towards food, and we're talking about maybe getting BID involved, and that'd be great if that's the way the committee and the board wants to go. And we're gonna go bigger this year because it was such a success last year. So we're asking for more money. We're no longer spending $7,000 on elections this year, and we have about $30,000 to go till June. So considering it was a successful event, I'm asking the board to approve up to $8,000 allocation for the picnic this year.
Do you know the exact how much we have left?
30,000.
On the bat?
No. I was gonna give it.
There was a question about that when you were gone.
That's a perfectly legitimate question. You can look at the website at any day, and it has an update. It's $30,489.
It has to be spent by June.
Well, it's allocated until June. You don't have to spend it.
So public comment, Barry?
You were talking about getting the bid involved?
I said there's discussion amongst, there was some interest by some board members that perhaps bid could get.
Because you should know, the bid cannot participate in anything outside the bid, and the park would not be in the
Then we
bid.
wouldn't involve them. We're just trying, we want to bring local businesses into it more, I think, is like.
They could put you on local businesses, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
You have a committee this year, Barry.
If there's any, sort of related, if there's any change left over, it might be a good idea to circle back and apply some money. I know it wasn't brought up at the budget meeting and get this website redone so that we can promote Rob's project properly.
Totally awesome.
Very awesome.
Okay, is that it? Or,
Anyone from the board, Eric?
Yeah, I wanted to just
Oh, wait, hold on,
reiterate.
Richard.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was at the budget meeting. Our friends at Johnny Rockets went out of their way last year, as I understand it, they actually spent more than even contracted to. They took a serious hit in the money. They're still this year, my understanding, Rob will correct me if I'm wrong, is they're still going to do it as a loss, just not quite as big as a loss. And to go to what Barry said, I was talking to John Walker about a different event at the park. And there is some interest from the bid in being participatory in things. The details are still up in the air at that, but apparently the bid isn't quite as constrained, or at least John doesn't see it quite as constrained as we may have thought in the past. And I think getting local businesses involved in this event and other events would be a good thing because the business owners are stakeholders just as much as everybody else. And a lot of times they've been kept out of our events because whatever. So I'd like to see that change.
Any other public
I'm
comment?
totally in favor of spending this money.
Contact the chamber too.
Barry, is the bid, they're not like prevented from, like by law, they're not prevented from.
Yeah, they actually are by law prevented from spending
But they're not
money
even-
outside of the area, so.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Anybody else? Do we have any
Anyone
other
else?
public comments?
I was just, so are we gonna get bids like from Nyambura and stuff like that?
Whatever the committee decides,
Oh, okay.
I want to set up an if this gets approved, I'd like to then formally ask for an ad hoc committee, and I'll send around an email, and you guys, whoever wants to be part of it. And we'll talk about all that. I'm not making any decision.
Got it.
I'm just giving you information.
Perfect.
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I think I ate like $500 worth of hamburgers last year, so I really, I can't not support this, this report.
I'll be back.
No, I mean, I think as, you know, it's a good event, we've got a lot of money left. I mean, I think it's,
signups. It was a good outreach event.
yeah, I'm in favor of it. That's why we did it.
Alex?
Yeah, I think it went very smoothly because we had a good turnout, and also people were, like Johnny Rockets, I think we should try to reward them for being so generous to us by at least being consistent and loyal. I enjoyed the burger very much.
That's an
Ketchup only.
No, that event was very successful. It was great for outreach, and we did some surveys too, with so many people there, which was very helpful. So, yeah, support it.
Mr. Sussman. Lisa?
I'm in support of it.
Mr. Niederberg?
I think it's a good idea. I think it works very well for outreach. And besides that, the minority is on next year's budget. I'd be honest, come on.
Can I vote?
Okay, this is.
Well, wait a minute,
of
my
course-
comment, because I didn't get a chance to make a short comment, is I thought it was a great event too. And I thought it was nice that you got that big poster from Richard for the Totally Awesome event. That was nice last month. And whereas I appreciate Johnny Rockets, they're a nice outfit, I do think we should have competitive bidding, because I called In and Out, and it's like $2,300 with the chips, compared to $3,850 for the, that's before we
that's
bump it up
correct.
by $1,000.
We'll talk about it in committee.
Yeah, this is.
No,
No, because we're
Join the
talking
committee,
about it,
baby.
let me tell you what we're not talking about in committee. Because the last time we met on this event, there was no committee. It was done over there.
No, it's not
Again,
true. It was at my house.
Right.
No, we had
It was
to
not a
have
committee.
it.
And then we have people here that were at the committee meeting.
I know.
What
I
are you
wasn't
talking about?
I just would
You're
like.
not,
to-
you're not even saying the right thing.
Rob, there was no
I
agenda
just
for that
said,
meeting. It was
we're not
a-
making any decisions.
Good.
We'll talk about it in the committee,
Fine, but I
like we
didn't
did
get it on the
last
record.
year.
You're interrupting me.
Yes, I am.
Okay, the reason why I like to get it on the record is because then people go into a committee, they come out, and they say, Eric Previn is off the board. So that's why, okay?
And did I come up to you personally and say, I didn't think you should have been hooked off?
Rob,
Okay,
you
So,
we're
and
going
no matter
to-
what I do to you, Eric, or what, how I try
Excuse
to
me?
appease and listen to you, you don't listen
Excuse
back.
me?
I do listen very carefully.
We had a committee
Excuse me?
meeting
I listened
on this
very-
last year.
All right,
You were there.
we're going to vote now.
No,
Okay,
your public gets one.
Alex,
Yes.
Mr. Sussman,
Yes.
Eric Previn.
Yes, with conditions.
Can't write conditions now. Heidi?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Patrice?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Richard Welsh?
Yes, with a side of fries.
Okay. Richard Niederberg?
Yes.
Rita?
Yes.
Mr. Schiller?
Do I have to abstain? Abstain.
No, you don't have to say.
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
It's unanimous.
Okay, now we'll go on to C. I can't wait to see the fireworks. Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates $1,500 towards the purchase of T-shirts for board members and volunteers. I don't think that this should say a Totally Awesome Picnic. I don't think that was in the original thing. It's just for T-shirts that can be used at a variety of events. Okay?
So it's board members and volunteers, or it's?
For board members and volunteers.
Just period.
Just period.
So
after
can I
that.
talk about the motion?
Yes.
Go for it. So the reason why I brought this up was because I've been to other committee neighborhood council events, And all the volunteers, like armies of people, come in, they sign up, they put on these T-shirts, and they have the name of the council, and these young people go out, they're helping people, and those are the volunteers, and those are the people running the booths, and it just felt like community. It doesn't feel like it here, but it felt like community, and everybody's together, they get to take the shirt home, and they were part of the event.
We've
So,
had shirts before.
well, I want to get
them back.
more shirts for the volunteers and board members, so people who are at the events can see who we are, we can identify them, and give them away for the volunteers as thank yous. So that's what started this, because I saw it somewhere else, and I thought we should do it too.
Do you remember who we got them from? They're good designs, everything's in place. Great. I mean, the artwork's already done.
Great.
The artwork like this, the one like that?
No, the one with the reel, the
No.
reel.
Yeah,
The
that's
heart
a
and
nice
the reel, I love Studio City, very beautiful. I know you like that design.
I did not get one.
And the long sleeves, those were really nice.
We'll make sure you get one for it.
Okay, are we voting?
Okay.
We'll get a little one for the puppet.
Do we have public comments?
What about the idea about a contest, Rob? Isn't that an idea?
For the T-shirts?
Public comment.
Oh, for the design? Bring it up.
Well, we
Okay.
brought it up in the
If
committee.
there's going to be some public
Yeah,
comment.
it's not on the motion, but we can certainly, I'm all for that. I have no.
Throw it back in committee. Is that good? I mean, if you don't want to do it now, because they're moving
No,
on.
you gotta go to a committee.
That's an implementation issue, right?
So you wanna do
Well,
a friendly amendment?
Okay, is this
We'll find out
board
where
which,
we included it.
Well,
okay.
I understand your
Hello.
point,
Hello. We're going to run around. We already heard from you. Heidi, do you have any comments?
I'm totally supportive of it, comment.
Patrice is gone.
I'll be back, but, yeah.
Do you have any comments?
My shirt will be covered in mustard, I'm sure.
Okay.
We'll make them yellow.
Perfect, I like it.
Yellow's one of our colors. It works.
I already spoke.
Mr. Zbicki?
I spoke.
No comment.
No. Lisa?
It's nice to have an identity for the shirts.
Richard Niederberg?
Get the games on.
Okay, vote.
All right, we're voting on shirts.
Has public comment.
I just want to point out really quick to the committee, I don't think the Totally Awesome picnic was part of the motion.
No, it's not. It's been, we took that out.
And we need to maybe consider having T-shirts with puppets on them.
There you go. Okay, Mr. Zbicki, your vote.
C, yes.
All right, Andrew Sussman,
Why not?
Lovingly.
Lovingly.
Eric Brevin,
Guess the whole story.
T-shirts,
Yeah, sure.
Lovingly.
Heidi,
You're lovingly.
Eve,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Patrice. Patrick,
Yeah.
Richard Welsh,
Yes.
Mr. Niederberg,
Yeah.
Rita,
Yes.
Mr. Schiller.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous.
I'm gonna milk it to death.
We're starting something.
Okay, next, we have motion D. The Board of the Studio City.
I got you. Guys, before, okay, D, what are we doing about D? Does she want, do you want that on the?
E, no, it has to be continued
Right.
to another month because Gibson would like for me to have a conversation with
Okay.
the city attorney's office.
Hold it and continue it until
Yes.
next month, until we get some guidance.
Or
from
possibly the following month.
Okay, guys, before we
Until
go
I
on.
have clarification.
Yeah. Before we go on to E, F, and G, can I just point out E, F, G, and H? Because these are your fellow board members who went out of pocket ahead of time, and because of a change in the way that Dunn does the money, we can't just pay them, we have to actually re-vote on this. We can't do it as a group, but I would just ask, I don't think anyone really needs to say a whole lot about any of these, right? Because this is literally people who went out of their own pocket with the expectation already that they do.
Point of clarification.
that. Yes,
So
sir.
further clarify, there is a new rule that was this last month that they require not just the BAC for approval of the fund. So let's say Luminaria, we approve $3,000. Then we used to just submit, okay, Richard spent $100 on cookies. And we used to put the receipt for the cookies in, and we could reimburse Richard $100 for cookies. Now, we need to have a second board vote action that states Richard gets to be reimbursed $100 for cookies for Luminaria. So it's actually now requires another board action. That's why we have to go into detail for each event for Keith and everybody else here.
Okay, so I'm
That's
gonna
to
read,
clarify.
so motion E, well, after I read the motion, then everyone can have a thing to say.
Hard way.
All right.
Motion E, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates $404.74 to reimburse Keith Schwalenberg for the following event: Green Living Fair, Spring of 2017 for $22.50, October Film Festival, October 2017 for $103, East Valley Preparedness Event, November 2017 for $50, Luminaria, December 2017 for $229.24. Do we have public comments on this?
I have a very quick public comment. It's actually for
Yeah.
motion F. You left Barry's name out of that motion. Other than that, I'm in favor of all of these.
Okay, we're in motion E. Anyone else?
Oh, further clarification before, if I can, I know, but this is not asking for extra money. The money was already allocated. I really know. We're not asking for extra.
Yes, okay. Wayne from Encino, yeah.
Yeah, I think also you should increase it and add sales tax to it too. Because I don't think you had sales tax.
I agree.
Just keeping with the city's corruption policy, okay?
Okay.
Not as
All
important.
right,
All right.
let's call it.
It's important.
Any people say, we're just gonna vote on this?
But it's a budget.
No, it has to be specific.
Yeah, we're doing it.
Each one needs its own BAC.
Ready? Alex is Vicky.
C, yes. Lovingly.
Andrew,
Lovingly, yes.
Eric,
Yes.
Heidi. Yes. Keith,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Patrice. Yes. Patrick,
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg,
Yes.
Rita,
Yes.
Mr. Schiller,
Yes?
me, yes. Unanimous. Thank you.
All right, motion F. That's right, we need to amend this. It's supposed to say the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates $14.10 for bus fare and gas to pick up and return the rental truck for Luminaria to Barry Johnston, who has left.
His name has to be on that.
Yeah. Okay, public comments on this?
No.
Yes, Wayne?
If you can do it that cheap, I'll hire you to move my trucks up to the Lake Hughes and back. I really like these rates, it's very, very.
Yeah, it's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's run down the things.
All right, everybody, let's see, here we go. Alex,
Gratefully, yes.
Mr. Sussman.
Yes.
Eric Preven.
Yes.
Heidi. Yep. Keith.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Patrice. Yes. Patrick.
Yes.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yes.
Rita.
Yes.
Mr. Schiller.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Motion G, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates $33.30 to reimburse Mr. Craig Radow for cookies for Luminaria. Public comment. Knock it out, Wayne.
Well, I just say that,
Thank you, Wayne.
these look like rather cheap cookies, so that's.
Very good, they're very good.
good.
Let's call the.
All right.
Buy them
G.
in Beverly Hills next time.
Okay.
Okay.
We
Okay,
have to
G.
spend money inside LA.
All right. We're voting on G. Alex is Vicky.
Yes.
Andrew Sussman.
Yes.
Eric Preven.
Yes.
Heidi McKay. Keith Schwalenberg.
Yes.
Lisa Budgeon.
Yes.
Patrice Berlin. Patrick Lewis.
Yeah.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yes.
Rita Villa. Yes. Robert Schiller.
Yes.
Me. Another.
Okay, motion H, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates $30.01 to Denise Wellbang for gasoline for the generators used at Luminaria. Wayne from Encino.
Yeah, so we just want to make sure that she bought it at that cheap gas station. Buy it over at Topanga Canyon and Ventura.
Yeah, okay, let's
At
call
that round.
the, let's call
Forget
the.
that.
You can spend it.
Didn't
it's
take
cash
that much
price
gas
on
to
a
get
credit
there.
card.
Right.
All right.
Cash is the same as.
Alex
Taller.
is Vicky.
Yes.
Andrew
Yes.
Sussman. Eric Preven.
Yes.
Heidi McKay. John Cruz, no, he's not here. Keith Schwalenberg.
Yes.
Lisa Karajian.
Yes.
Patrice Berlin. Patrick Lewis.
Yep.
Richard Welsh.
Uh-huh.
Richard Niederberg.
Yes.
Rita Villa.
Yes.
Robert Schiller.
Yes.
Denise Wellman. Okay.
Okay, motion I, the Board of the Studio City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates $250 for a timer. Please, everyone, vote for this. Look at how nice it will be
Yes.
when there's
Yes.
just those little things, those little
Yes.
lights going off.
Yeah, good
We
one.
looked it up on Amazon. We can go cheap for like $90.
Can
or
you
we
get it
go
ones
a
with
good
like
one.
shocks?
Here,
Little taser.
The speakers should hold a little wire.
I love shots.
Okay, Okay, do we have public comment on this? Yes, Barry, or what's your name? Wayne from SCNC.
So, this is a long time coming. I know it's for my puppet. There should be two, one for me and my puppet, so get two of them.
I agree. Eric, anyone board have anything to add on this?
The original one was handmade, so you can't be fixed.
Made metal shop.
That's why it didn't last
We
long.
need to find the person.
I would just emphasize,
No,
do
we
not get
don't.
an expensive fancy one, to be honest, because it will walk, you know.
No, I agree, but
We need a good
I think the
one,
main
like a
thing is
game
we
show
don't
one.
want, we can't have one that breaks.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
We need one with the colors
From like
green,
Magic
yellow,
in 78,
red,
yeah.
All right,
so
let's-
people know where they're
Should we
at.
call the vote?
Yes, we're gonna vote on this. Yep. All right, Alex is Vicky.
Yes.
Andrew Sussman.
Overwhelmingly, yes.
Eric Ruffin.
Yes.
Heidi McKay. Keith Schwalenberg.
Yes.
Lisa Crutchins.
Yes.
Patrice Berlin. Patrick.
Yes.
Richard Welsh. Richard Niederberg.
Absolutely, yes.
Rita Villa. Yes. Robert Schiller.
Yes.
Myself. Another, yeah.
Okay, motion J, the Board of the City Neighborhood Council approves and allocates up to is the key phrase on this one, everyone, up to $100 towards the purchase of DVDs for the spring film series. This is Richard Niederberg, and he has assured us that it probably won't be 100. Richard, would you like to?
Now, what happened is the library does not have all of the titles we need. And so I went to the Friends of the Library. And they will, once they know the total price, they will give us some money. This is the last little piece for probably something that's gonna come up to $60 altogether. And most of it's gonna be taken care of by the library, I hope. The point is that I have to put it on here and go through the motions just to cover any gap there is. Thank you.
Cool.
Yes.
Wayne from Encino.
Well, I'm kind of upset about this because there's no holes in it. So
Okay.
that's absolutely perfect.
Okay. Time out. All right. We're voting on 7J.
Alex?
Alex?
Yes.
Mr. Sussman?
Yes.
Eric Previn?
Yes.
Heidi McKay? Keith Schwalenberg?
Yes.
Lisa Grudgeon?
Yes.
Patrice? Yep. Patrick?
Yes.
Richard?
Yes.
Richard?
Yep.
Rita? Yes. Rob?
Yep.
Okay.
Before we move on, can I please say something about motion D? Did we, just for Gibson to clarify, did I need a vote to have my motion tabled?
No, just the president can table it if you want to do the next one.
Right, the president can table.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we're on government, right?
Yeah, we're on the government.
Do this with pen,
All right. I believe Rita is up. Number 10.
Okay, 10. All right. So the Government Affairs Committee met and came forward with a series of motions for this meeting that are here. This information with background was disseminated to all of the board members by the president when she disseminated the minutes a week or so ago from the last meeting for approval tonight. And in addition to that, I disseminated some additional information with respect to the motion on motion C on SB 827. So we can just go through item A. Item A is a return the Van Billboard, the president of Van Billboard Blight actually came to the Government Affairs Committee meeting and made a presentation related to this motion. This motion, I don't know how many of you know this, but many years ago now, it's been several years that this has been in process. Originally, the city's the city council set up a visioning group to address how we wanted to handle the issue of billboards in our city. I was appointed by Councilman Procordian to represent our CD2 on that. I attended the meetings relating to the visioning group, and we were there with people from the sign industry, people from other neighborhood councils, people from the government, all were there and came forth with a series of recommendations of what we wanted to do. That then went out to the Plum Committee, and obviously lobbying took place behind the scenes, because by the time it got to Plum, the recommendations that had been agreed on at the Visioning Committee were watered down, and another complete thing was put forth. There was a lot of protest about that. The neighborhood council at that time did a CIS on it, asking basically the same things that are listed here are the things we were asking for then. That then went back and was approved by Plum. An ordinance was sent through, was heard by Plum once, and then they asked for some additional information. A long time went past again, another year or so, and then more lobbying took place behind the scenes by sign companies, and more, again, the ordinance came forth in a watered down version. And we weighed in again, basically with the same things we're asking for here, just being consistent with what we've said in the past. And now the items come back again and been watered down again, and a whole lot of study was done with respect to how much money the city could get if they sold off various and allowed, digital signs to be placed in government property and on parks and all of this. And so again, Ban Billboard Blight and the community has rallied again and said, okay, we want to stay with the sign ordinance version B+, which was already approved by the City Planning Commission. And so that's basically what we're doing here, is we're again saying the same thing that we've said 4 times already. We still want these specific things, and we would want to submit this as a CIS. So consistent with what we've been saying all along, there shouldn't be extra grandfathering. We should continue to have restrictions on off-site signs. They shouldn't be able to put a digital sign on Ventura Boulevard that's going to bleed into your window if you live across from Ventura Boulevard or up into the hills or whatever. And we should maintain the quality of life, and you shouldn't put it in city parks and in recreational facilities. So that's what we're continuing to say here. And so unless someone has a question, that's all I have to say about it. We should vote.
I do.
Okay.
About sign districts, how specifically, or where are the sign districts in Studio City?
Well, there are a number of sign districts. The sign district that's closest to Studio City is the one at Universal Studios. And we negotiated very hard with Universal to have all of their signs pretty much facing inside to their own park, so they don't bleed out too much onto the freeway. And the one sign that was digital that was was by Disney, and it was on the corner of, what is that street? It's not, no.
Hollywood Way?
No, what is the street?
Barham?
Barham, thank you.
Thank you.
That was on Barham, and it was bleeding up into the hills, and they did agree at least to turn that down some. And so we've worked really hard on those around here. But what they're trying to do is saying not only should you be allowed to have these digital signs in the sign districts, but we should have more sign districts, which they might put anywhere. And the thing of it is that places that they allow sign districts is anywhere that there's transit. And because Ventura has transit, we could end up with a sign district defined they decide that it's okay to have a sign district on Ventura, but Ventura is very close to residential properties on both sides, and it could adversely affect the quality of life in our community. So all we're doing here is being consistent with the CISs that we've already put on file, and Ban Billboard Blight has asked us to refile and resubmit to update it, say this is still what we want. So that's what we're proposing to do here.
Take us out.
Yes.
I will make this quick and on point. Everything Rita said about the historical background of this is true. I was on government affairs for a large portion of that time. I was here for the various board meetings where we voted on this. It's not surprising that We negotiate a deal where everybody's happy, and then suddenly everybody gets what they want, except the people that actually have to live with it. Their residences on Ventura, not just near it. And as I've said before, and nobody ever listens, Blade Runner was an apocalyptic vision of Los Angeles as we should try to avoid, not a goal and a plan to be reached as quickly as possible. That's what these sign districts are. I can see them doing sign districts all up and down Ventura Boulevard and anywhere else they think they can make a couple bucks. The motion tonight is historically consistent with what this board has said all along, trying to protect our neighborhood and our quality of life. Please vote for this.
All right. We have, Wayne.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you go down the hotels they built in Figueroa and 8th Street downtown. That's what your sign districts are gonna look like, where they're gonna allow them to be put on the walls. And they get around things, like what's happening in Staples is insane down there. They wanna do this all citywide.
That's a sign district.
Because of all the money that they're gonna make on these signs. This motion is perfectly crafted, it's the will of the people, just as it's written. But you got those 15 little conniving goats down there in that city council that are getting pocketed millions of dollars by the sign companies. So, yeah, go ahead and pass it and stay on this, especially your council member, because he likes money and they got $100 million to shower on these people. It's gonna be a very hard fight, a very hard fight.
Victoria.
Victoria, do you have anything to say? Do you have anything to say about the sign district?
The sign, I fight that, because if we're not careful, we're gonna look awful. They can put them in Encino. Encino's already discussed.
That's not nice.
You say I said that.
Tell Wayne from Encino that. I think you'll have Encino constituency.
All right, shall we vote?
Yes.
Okay, since this is not funding, everybody who's for this, please raise your hand. Mr. Previn, are you against it or abstaining?
I'm against it.
Okay, Mr. Previn is against it, everyone else voted in favor of it.
The next motion is motion 9B, related to the pilot program, which is proposed, indicating that we are opposed to SB 905, which is a pilot program that would authorize, with or without conditions, selling, giving, or purchasing alcoholic beverages at licensed premises between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m. Our rationale was in Studio City's many restaurants are primarily located in the commercial corridors along Ventura Boulevard and along Mork Park, and both those corridors are immediately adjacent to suburban residential neighborhoods, which would experience noise and other disruption as a result of these extended hours. We also have a concern about the traffic and volume of traffic and people driving, and we had a terrible accident just recently in Studio City. I can't necessarily tag that back to late hours, but it was in the wee hours of the morning that took place. So that's why we are opposed to this. So that's it.
Mr. Wayne.
Yeah, I just think it should definitely not apply to Encino. So we have to make that clear. Sherman Oaks, no. Hollywood, I actually would be in favor of this in Hollywood. This might be good for a limited basis for Hollywood if it could be a trial basis. They want to make it permanent and statewide. So that's why it's a horrible law. If it were rewritten to let it be a pilot program in certain areas, I think it'd be worth a shot to look at it. But they're not going to do it. They're going to make it permanent and they're going to ruin our lives. So I support your motion.
I'm in the strange position of generally agreeing with my learned friend from Encino here. If we could have permission, if we could have controls, certain areas maybe, but if they can just do it anywhere willy-nilly throughout the city, that's a bad idea. So I support the motion. Thank you.
In my opinion, this was brought to us from state legislatures who were lobbied by the wine and spirits people, because wine and spirits saw that marijuana was coming in and they knew their revenues would drop. And this is a way for them to get their revenues back up where they want them. And I know this because I did fundraising for major Democrats in Sacramento. They are campaign-driven, campaign funds-driven. And I think this is a very good call. I think this would be a bad thing for Studio City. You would be letting drunks out on the street at 4 in the morning when people are getting ready to go to work. So I think this is an excellent call to say no.
Okay. Shall we vote on this? Okay.
No.
Okay, okay, we're gonna vote. Everybody in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Lisa, are you for, against, abstaining?
No, I want bars to stay open until 4.
Okay, you're for, you're against it.
They make marijuana the same rules.
Okay. But all of it were yes?
Everybody else was a yes.
Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. Motion carries. Okay, the next motion relates to SB 827. I've sent out a lot of information on this, plus there was extensive background on this in the information that you were sent out by the president on my motion template. Basically, we're opposed to SB 827, the bot, which imposes statewide mandated zoning, allowing for denser and taller zoning near transit, and overrides local municipal zoning laws, ignoring the adverse impact of such zoning on local communities. And then the motion gives a whole lot of very specific information as to why we don't think it would be a good idea. But the most salient point that I would make is that it takes away control of land use issues from the local community, and I think it is and puts them in state hands, and I think it's really important that the local land use committees have the ability to weigh in on what is happening in their community that's adjacent to them. So that's all I want to say about it.
Yes, sir?
It's really well drafted, this motion, especially the loss of ridership. The public transit's hemorrhaging riders, and this is just a land grab by developers. They are going to absolutely decimate municipal zoning because they're going to define all of these stops by buses as being a high transit occupancy area. This is the California Democratic Party at its worst. They are absolute scumbags that wrote this, and they should be put in prison. If you could put that in one line at the bottom, and jail the author of SB 827 immediately on a mental hold, because I think it's Stein or whatever his name is.
Wiener.
The guy from San Francisco. Yeah, that's so typical of the people, you know. So anyway, it's a horrible law. It has a chance to make it. I pray it doesn't. You know, it's going to be a real disaster if it passes. So.
Richard Adams.
Yes.
I would point out that this passes, it'll make SB 1818 look like one of the best land use ideas ever passed in this state. This is a nightmare. I'd also point out that there's a bus line that goes up over Laurel Canyon into West Hollywood. Yep, that's a transit line. You have a half mile on either side where you can build high-density housing because, my God, they have a right to live in the hills too. And public transit is losing riders for one very good reason. Public transit in LA, unless you live in exactly the right place and have exactly the right job, is for people whose time is not valuable. Anybody can scrape up the money for a car, gets one as soon as they can. I did. It was right after I rode the bus in the same bus every day for a week. And the guy next to me had the same shirt on for 3 days, and I realized his freckles were actually fleas. I went down to the auction and bought a car the next week. So, yes, please vote for this. I mean, Laurel Canyon and Coldwater are a mile apart, a half mile to each side. High density housing, the whole area. Boom, done.
Victoria?
I thank you again for opposing this. I live behind the Sportsman's Lodge, and I appreciate your efforts to keep our traffic at its currently unendurable level and not worse. Thank you very much.
All right. We'll vote on this one?
Oh, which one?
Richard?
I have a comment.
Oh, Mr. Sussman.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Rita, you wrote this and crafted it very well. What I want to correct is that this gross hyperbole by the audience just takes the heart out of, a well-crafted thing. It's just nonsense to say that the hills are going to be filled with 85-story buildings. These hills are zoned R1. They're not going to be changed to multifamily or whatever, and it just, by lying or mischaracterizing the truth, just minimizes any effort to make a good statement.
Did you want to make an amendment to this? Were you wanting to
No,
amend?
he's just commenting on the.
Okay, I didn't know if you were trying to propose an amendment. I wanted to hear what the amendment was.
Can I
Okay.
just ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
I agree with this, but and I read everything you sent, but I was just curious, what, a transit and local, I mean, what is Ventura Boulevard included in that? So any main
Yes.
street that a bus goes down?
Yes,
A
right.
bus at a certain frequency. There has to be a bus every 15 minutes or
Right, I
so, I
saw that,
believe.
but I don't know what the.
There's a frequency.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
But it can even be on, it could be any,
But I didn't know.
cold water for sure.
All right, let's
Yeah.
vote on this,
All right,
guys.
guys, we're gonna vote. Everybody in favor of this, please raise your hand.
It focuses on the specific forward, right?
Okay, unanimous, okay.
Are we gonna go or hold?
D and E, I would like to ask if I can move those to the next meeting in the interest of time. It's late and Barry's most prepared to speak to it, and he had to leave, so. I'm going to ask to table those two. Okay?
No, I'm sorry, Wayne. You did more, though, don't worry.
Come back next month.
Come back next month. We'll have
I just
this
want
one.
to, when you see Paul, put Paul in quotation marks to go for Cory.
So rude.
Okay, Rob, you're on.
Don't give him, please, nothing to him.
Oh, wait, can I comment on E?
Well, we tabled them both for next
So
month.
that's a good trick, you just throw it on the agenda, and then we take it right off without any comments? Is that-
Yes, yeah, because it's going to be talked about when it, next month, when it's, yeah. And then you'll have total opportunity and total
But if
your
a member of the
presentation.
public, for example, came and sat until 10:30.
Did anyone come here for that?
So I think it's a bad practice.
Because you don't have a life.
Here's the, my report is, I just told you about the change in how we have to do board action BACs for expenditures. We're not spending, we allocated $7,500 in the budget for elections, which we're not going to be spending. So every day you can check and see how our expenditures are by looking on the website. So it's very clear what's happening. We have $30,489.45 in our kitty, and that gives us March, April, May, June, 4 months. So we've just approved about another $10,000 in expenditures. So after expenses for the next 4 months, we're going to have about $15,000 remaining unallocated. Okay, that's my report.
Public comments for, who's actually signed up for public comments on this? Anyone?
Yeah, probably
All of them?
those two.
Wayne from Encino.
Yeah, I just think it's a tragedy to leave that 15,000 on the table. He's right. Even SCNC, Van Nuys have the same problem. We're leaving a ton of money from the valley on the table. And maybe you should get together with a couple of those other neighborhood councils and find something to group it in. Spend it or lose it, you know. So he's right. You have to get that money spent or you're going to lose it forever.
Victoria?
Could we throw more at Officer Boone?
Yeah.
We just need, it has to go through, another budget proposal on the website. Yeah.
Has to be animated.
Good idea.
And it's Sergeant.
Oh, okay.
He got very mad.
Okay, I know we're not gonna leave any money on the table. And Rob, I replied to your email earlier today about the detailed receipts. Did you get a chance to get back to me and tell me exactly how far back we're supposed to go on that?
I got them to admit that all the other NCs have the same were balking as I was that there's no way we have how many pizzas and what kind of pizza we had in December. So they're like, well, from now on, please do what you can. So from this point forward, if we get pizzas, I have to know line by line how much each pizza is and what it is and how much it costs, whatever it is, salad, bread, it can't just be, so from now on, everything has to be itemized specifically.
What if they offer a package?
But that's a reasonable practice. That's how in productions all over America, you have to itemize stuff.
Eric, do you want to start your 2 minutes?
Yeah, that's my 2 minutes. My 2 minutes is, we should be itemizing these things. And I find that expenditures show up that have not been approved for things that I go, oh, that's interesting. Like, we revamped the computer in the office and did all these virus and things like that, and we spent $200 to tune up the generator. Half the room said, why are we buying generators when we can rent them for $75? So I do think it's a good idea to itemize receipts, so thank you for that. And finally, I would say, you know, we have some money left in the kitty, which evidently we do. I really would like to let our world know. I mean, I'm not one of the board members who favors dragging yourself right up to the well with your bag, but I do think that we should find some of the organizations in our neighborhood, we have a lot of problems in our neighborhood that might benefit from these. I mean, Carpenter Avenue, are those all already budgeted? Is that the idea, those?
No, Carpenter just put one in, and it's actually really sad.
So they'll be coming, it's a sad one?
I think so.
Well, okay, but let's not get into the minutia, I'll just finish. But I do think that we should ask the schools and the other existent, and I don't know why we banned the Studio City Beautification Association. Those guys did a great job on that walkway over in Karajian's district, that beautiful little area, it says Studio City Beautification. That looks great. So I don't know why we don't do more stuff like that.
They haven't come to us.
Well, let's tell them that we have $15,000. I bet you they'd show up.
That's not, okay.
Tell them we have 3.
Heidi, anyone?
No comment.
Okay, Rita?
Did you have comments? I didn't want to just skip you. Okay.
Thanks for your efforts.
No, I did, yes, I come back to the point that I made a little bit earlier. I really would like us to do something about our website in a meaningful way. And if we have $15,000 left, can we please get that website addressed?
The biggest problem, I have gone to the city attorney. We can only use the 6 little Indians that they have blessed and splashed. We cannot go to anyone else. I broached the subject with our current webmaster and said, you know, we don't want what we have. We would like something different. And he was a little perplexed. I have to go, I think, and sit down in front of him and say, excuse me, but this is what we want. And if, you know, you can't give it to us, then we're gonna have to shop. And then I explained to them that what we are asking for, none of the 6 little Indians are capable of giving us.
Has anyone looked at all the other neighborhood council websites to see if there's something that looks good?
Yeah.
I just think somebody has to be able to do something on our website.
Do we actually have one of the 6 little Indians who's capable?
Because I've talked to other websites that I thought we would like. I went and called emailed the VPs and whatever.
Yeah, guys,
spoke to them.
this is totally not on, and this is a committee. At some point, we need to form a committee, to work on the website. We do this at the end of every meeting and it never goes anywhere. You know what I mean? Yeah.
15K, you could hire one of the little Indians and they'd squander it, but at least you'd get something.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say real quick, Eric, to your, and this has to do with the budget, so I'm just gonna say it, that I wrote emails to all people who come back to us in the past, Walter Reed, Carpenter, Rio Vista. Carpenter wants increased security with a bulletproof gate. That's their proposal. That's what they want. Yep. There was another one, a group that wants money for feminine products for homeless women. They're going to be here next month. I put out a thing on my personal Facebook page that said, you know, to all Studio City people, like letting them know we have money and blah, blah, blah. The suggestions were build a wall between North Hollywood and bring back Take 'Em Out. So yeah, that's what happened to me. So yeah, I know. I could. Yeah, I definitely. So anyways.
Okay.
Yeah. Schiller? No, you're.
How are the pot stickers? Were they delicious?
Yeah.
How are you living without
Since, are we gonna vote on, okay.
shakes?
Board of the City Neighborhood Council has reviewed the monthly expenditure report for January 2017 and hereby accepts and approves. Alex is Vicky.
Yes.
Andrew Sussman.
Yes.
Eric Previn.
Yes.
Heidi McKay. Keith.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Patrice.
Yep.
Patrick.
Yep.
Richard Welsh.
Yes.
Richard Niederberg.
Yeah.
Rita.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Me.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
Yay. Look at us
Yay.
walking through this.
Land use, Richard Welsh.
I've prepared extensive comments to read to you all tonight. 10 minutes will not be enough. No, it was a slow month. It was a slow month. I've got really nothing to say. So,
Grab that hot mic.
Yeah. So I also haven't had an outreach meeting in a very long time. I'm embarrassed about that. I've been having a lot of work. It's been busy. But I kind of, we had someone who was in the audience, and unfortunately she went home. But I know that she was here to like get active about the issue of homelessness. So I'm hoping to coordinate with people and get people involved, because I feel like that's the #1 issue whenever we do any sort of event and we survey people or ask people. That's the thing they talk about. It's the thing they talk about next door. It's like the issue. So I'd really love to focus our efforts on getting people involved specifically on that issue, because there's not really much besides like the events that we do that we're really asking for community involvement, and I think that's one thing. So I'm going to try and go out and see how they're doing that in other NCs. They do a lot of like outreach programs where they go out and they speak with someone who they view as homeless and kind of get information from them, and then give that information to PATH so that they can do follow-ups. And they meet weekly. They do this like every Sunday. They get coffee, and then they have a bunch of volunteers go out in groups so they're safe. And then PATH's able to come through, or LASA on the next Monday, and usually those people are in the same area, and they're able to check in on things like, you know, if they need medical or Social Security or other services. So that's kind of the thing I want to focus on. If you send me the 6 different vendors that do the websites, I'll gladly look them over, and I'll take ownership of trying to figure out the website, because that's obviously, I think, something outreach should do. So I'll try and see what the best option would be, and see if we can, because my vision has always been for when we find volunteers, to make it an easy way that, so when you first go to the website, it could quickly coordinate like what they're interested in, what's the issue they're interested in, and get also a little bit about their background. So like most professional organizations would organize like, I'm a person who cares about the issue of homelessness, but I don't want to go out and actually do outreach person to person, but I would do emails, I'll do research, I'll make phone calls. And so just something that allocates that, so that a committee chair member or whatever can say, all right, here's 10 people that want to do emails, here's 10 people that want to get out there and do the thing. So that's like the long-term vision. So, but I will take ownership of trying to find the right website that would be able to facilitate that. And that's about it.
Craig Radout has an excused absence, so unless someone else.
The all-important
VANC
VANC report?
Who's next?
You can give us the all-important VANC report?
Okay, VANC report. Okay, Robinson, about 3 minutes. What it took them 4 hours to say at the last VANC meeting about the change in the rules of presenting information. And that and a lot of other stuff was of very little value. The only thing of value I can think of basically is March 8th, to having a VANC meeting at whatever it is, the Carlos Cafe behind us. And I hope everybody goes there. We're paying for it anyway.
What date is that?
And you can park right in front of it. March, it's always second Thursday of the month. You know, at Carlos Cafe, which is the cafeteria here.
What time, 6 you said? 7, 6?
I think it's 6 o'clock. And the point is, you can park right next to it. It's very easy to do. The only thing I need help with is to get our banners up first and foremost, most prominently, that say City Neighborhood Council. Also, we gotta have the middle table front row center, because that's our table, you know? And so we're gonna have people get early, we want to have as large a group as possible, so we, you know, make an appearance. We're Studio City, it's happening in Studio City on our lot. Just please, to March 8th, Thursday night, be there, the food is actually okay.
Cultural affairs is
good
all
enough.
Richard. Cultural affairs, no.
Okay, and now is time for cultural affairs. Okay, we have a thing coming up about the Great Flood in Studio City, presented by Mary Mallard. That's coming up on the 24th of the month, next month. Okay?
That's
And,
24th of March, Richard?
There's no money there, there's not any money there, unless they want to put in some flyers, like we've got our own machine. It's really pretty interesting, the 1938 flood down to 1971. And so it'll be pretty good. After that, we have scheduled a series of probably 6, and we want to use all 6 of the days at the library to put in movies. The movies we're doing basically are primarily classics that were made in Studio City. And you guys always allocate any money for a movie. We can't actually borrow from the library itself. Normally, we try to get it free. Anyway, so that's taken care of. I hope that Keith does good publicity for it. You know, it would take a lot, basically, and get it out of the library. And so, you know, it'll be fun, if people can come see it. And it puts Studio City more on the map than already, because the studio's there first. Anyway, so that's what's going on in Public Affairs. I think that by this time, everybody has been paid or overpaid on the Luminaria stuff, basically. One person that, Mr. Molina, basically, got a check from the city. What? He's paid. The problem is that he was already paid by doing. I hope he did return the check.
Okay.
You know, other than that, everybody else is squared. I can't think of any.
Wait. Who paid Deutsch? Who paid Deutsch?
Nobody paid her.
All right, so she's out $100.
She's
He
out.
doesn't have to return our check.
No.
Pay her back.
No, you want Melina to pay her.
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't, he's not returning our check.
It's actually, no, it's actually 200, but anyway. Because she got impatient of him calling her. Sorry about that, she should have never paid him. I told her not to, but she got all nervous about it, she's an attorney and who knows.
Smooth that out next
Sounds
time.
good.
The point is, it all came out evenly, and the most important thing to report is that we've had absolutely no problem or repercussions on the parking, so we'll probably do it again. We're there again.
Can I bring up one thing?
Sure.
And we're on 17, right?
Yes.
Is there any way, I don't know how
No,
anyone
we're gonna
feels
move on,
about it.
because we're gonna go around
Oh,
on
I'm sorry,
17.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay, but now we're gonna start 17. So Eric, do you have anything to add? These are your final 2 minutes.
I give my time to Patrice.
Patrice.
This is a fast one. What do you guys think about getting some healthier food at our meeting? Yeah. Does anybody?
Better food.
Oh, I was eating that, and I was like, good, I'm having one healthy meal.
Something warm. Something that's heated.
Like a salad, I'm just asking. Anybody think about that?
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Are desserts healthy?
It depends.
There can be. But I think definitely we should upgrade the
You
diet.
got the money,
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty crappy.
Chinese chicken salad or something, salads or
Something.
whatever.
Pie.
No good food.
No what?
No what?
Anybody else?
Anyone have anything else to add, or you can just pass and we can go?
Fletcher. Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah.
I move to adjourn.
I second it.
We are adjourned.